Welcome to part 1 of Fairy Tale I Don't Want to Be the President. Before we go any further, please like, subscribe, and share this video.
Chapter 1, Part 1. My head felt dizzy, and my arms and thighs felt a little painful, as if they had been hit by a dump truck. He still remembers that he was attacked by wild beasts, but it seems that he has not been eaten yet. Rhodes opened his eyes and didn't see the unfamiliar ceiling. The sun was a bit dazzling, and his eyes narrowed unconsciously, and he subconsciously wanted to raise his hands to block his eyes. Wow. Someone carefully closed the curtains, which made Rhodes' eyes feel better. Counting the time. It's almost time to wake up. Rhodes heard someone talking, an old female voice. But he didn't understand what was said at all. It was not the Chinese he was familiar with, at least not Mandarin, nor does it sound like English or any other familiar language. Rhodes tilted his head slightly and saw an old lady with pink hair and a strange red cloak standing in front of the window. She should have been the one who spoke just now. How do you feel? A kind male voice came from the other side, and Rhodes saw an old man wearing a clown hat sitting cross-legged on a chair beside the bed. Of course, Rhodes didn't understand what he said either. Rhodes' throat was a little dry, and he asked with difficulty, "Where is this?" The two old men on both sides of the hospital bed looked at each other with doubts on their faces and did not understand what Rhodes was talking about. Rhodes thought for a while and said tentatively, "Where is this? Who are you?" "Well, is the mileage the edge degree?" Looking at the increasingly confused eyes of the two old men, Rhodes felt something bad. "I can't speak Mandarin, I can't speak English, and I can't speak plastic Cantonese. How can I fix this?" The old man in the clown hat jumped off the chair gently, and Rhodes found that he was still standing before he could sit up. It was too rude to think like this. Rhodes criticized himself and then noticed that this old man was incredibly agile and did not look like an elderly person at all. It seems like there is a language barrier. It's troublesome. The old man was a little troubled. "A language I have never heard before." The pink-haired lady asked, "Where did you pick up this child?" "It's in the forest, didn't I say it?" At this time, there was a knock on the wooden door, and a girl of 17 or 18 years old walked in. "President, it's almost time. If we don't leave, we may miss the regular meeting." "Ah, I almost forgot. Poorly Yusuka, can you take care of this child?" The old man asked the pink-haired lady. "I refuse. I hate humans, Makarov, and it's very noisy here." The pink-haired old lady said something disgusting about humans while helping Rhodes sit up, pouring a glass of water and handing it to him. "Thank you." Rhodes thanked him subconsciously. Poorly Yusuka couldn't understand, but she could probably guess what Rhodes was talking about. But she didn't respond. Instead, she turned around and left. "His injury is no longer serious. I'm going back." "Ah, thank you." Makarov knew the character of his old friend and knew that persuasion would be useless. Rhodes took a sip of water to moisten his dry throat and watched the pink-haired lady leave in confusion. The short old man was talking to the girl who had just come in. The two of them still spoke a language that Rhodes couldn't understand. Just from the looks they occasionally looked at him, he guessed that it had something to do with him. At this time, there was a slight pain in his left leg, which made Rhodes frown. He noticed that his left arm and waist were wrapped with bandages. He raised his hand to touch his head, and his forehead was also well bandaged. The wounds all over his body reminded him of the attack. Things are a bit weird. Rod remembers that he didn't want to move when he woke up in the morning because he stayed up late with his roommate. Two roommates who went to buy food lost contact one after another and never came back. Rhodes was so hungry that he had no choice but to take his remaining roommate and go out to look for someone. One of them went to the new canteen, and the other went to the old canteen. As a result, Rhodes accidentally tripped and fell to the ground because he was playing with his mobile phone while going up the steps. When he got up, he found that there was a big forest in front of him. What should you do if you suddenly find yourself in a strange place while walking? Don't panic. Turn on your phone first and check the location. If necessary, you can make an emergency call. But he didn't touch his phone. "Just when I tripped, my phone seemed to fly out." Rhodes realized that something was not going well, and that he might have encountered a phenomenon that was difficult to explain scientifically. CCTV once had a program called Pouyuan Science, which talked about a person sleeping at home normally, and when he woke up, he suddenly appeared in a city thousands of miles away. Rhodes suspected that he had encountered the real thing. Of course, there was a worse guess, that he had not arrived in another city, but in another world. Think carefully about whether your two roommates also encountered the same thing, so they didn't come back for a long time. No matter what, you still have to go to a place where there are people and ask. Rhodes tried hard to determine the direction, and after struggling for a while, he decided to go west. The weeds over there seemed to have been stepped on, but he regretted it a few minutes later because he woke up a beast as big as an elephant. He had never seen a giant beast like this, a bear covered in spots, with a pig's head and pig's hooves. A branch that Rhodes broke in order to defend himself had no deterrent effect in front of it. The moment the giant beast pounced, the branches broke and Rhodes was knocked out, his eyes blackened. Before he fainted, he heard the chirping of birds, the howling of wolves, the croaking of frogs, and the roar of unknown beasts. This is definitely not a normal world. It's just that Rhodes couldn't think about it at that time. He just felt that death seemed to come too suddenly, and there were still many things that had not been done in time. If there is a next life, he will definitely not play with his mobile phone while walking, especially when going up the stairs. But now it seems that he is not dead yet. Was he saved by the owner here? Hi there. Rhodes' thoughts were interrupted by a gentle voice. It was the girl who just entered the door. The girl is wearing a dark red dress, with long white hair hanging down to her waist. The bangs on her forehead are tied into a bunch and combed to the top of her head. She has delicate facial features and a gentle smile. This is a girl whose appearance and temperament will be very attractive no matter where she goes. Rhodes couldn't understand what she was saying, but judging from the way she waved, she was probably saying hello, right? Hello. Rhodes said this, and the other person's bright smile slightly dispelled his uneasiness. Just like what the president said, the girl showed an expression of, sure enough. Unfortunately, I don't understand what you were talking about. I think you are probably very distressed and uneasy. Ah, you don't understand this sentence. Anyway, the president has to go out for something. Please let me take care of you for the time being. The girl tried hard to communicate with gestures, but with little success. By the way, I haven't introduced you yet. My name is Mira Jane. Chapter 1, Part 2. She pointed her finger at herself and said slowly, word by word, I, Mira Jane. Mira Jane. Rhodes hesitantly learned a few syllables he didn't understand. A bright smile reappeared on Mira Jane's face. That's right, Mira Jane. Rhodes was infected by such a smile and repeated it twice after her, his pronunciation gradually becoming more standard. Mira Jane. He learned the first word in the world. What about you? Mira Jane pointed to herself. I, Mira Jane. Pointing to Rhodes again. What about you? Rhodes understood what she meant and pointed to himself. Rhodes? Lord. Mira Jane repeated. Rhodes. Rhodes slightly corrected his pronunciation like she did just now. The first step of communication, although a little reluctant, finally started. Please give me more advice, Rhodes. The girl said this and stretched out her right hand towards Rhodes. Rhodes gently held the other person's fingertips. Please, Mira Jane. He failed to learn the phrase, which probably meant something like, nice to meet you. Growling. Rhodes' stomach made an inappropriate noise. Rhodes held his stomach and opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. Mira Jane smiled knowingly. Ah, I understand this. Please wait a moment. She made a downward movement with her hands, turned around and left the room. Rhodes watched her leave the infirmary, picked up the cup, sipped the water, and began to sort out the few memories he had after the trip. First, there was the sudden appearance of the forest and the strange-looking beasts, and then there were the few people he saw when he woke up and the unique language they used. This is by no means a world that I am familiar with, nor is it an ordinary world. Rhodes wanted to know how long it had been since he fainted, what happened during that period, where he was, how to get back, and many more things. But even basic communication is a problem, and there is nowhere to ask these questions, which is very troublesome. He lifted the quilt. His leg still hurt a little, but he could move, so the injury shouldn't be serious. It's better not to move. Even though you don't understand, Mira Jane came in with a dinner plate, placed it on the bedside table, and made a sign of invitation, indicating that Rhodes should eat first. On the plate was a glass of milk and 2 delicate-looking sandwiches. The triangular bread slices are cut neatly, with lettuce, tomato slices, and ham slices sandwiched in the middle. The bright colors make it very appetizing. Rhodes picked up one and gave her a questioning look uncertainly. With her approval and the urging of the 5 Zong temple, Rhodes bit off an acute angle of the isosceles triangle. The entrance is filled with the soft, glutinous, and sweet taste of bread and the smooth and delicious taste of ham. Then the tomatoes were slightly sour and watery, coupled with the overly sweet sauce, which made Rhodes a little uncomfortable. But the refreshing fragrance of lettuce alleviates this problem very well. After swallowing this mouthful, Rhodes felt that he was really alive. But then he no longer cared about tasting the delicious food, and just swallowed it like a cow chewing peonies. After eating a sandwich, Rhodes' hunger eased a lot. He picked up the milk cup and felt the temperature on the wall of the cup. It was obviously heated on purpose. She must be a gentle girl who is very good at taking care of others, right? Rhodes cast a grateful look at her. Mira Jane smiled and watched him eat and drink quietly. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 2, Part 1. Mira Jane packed up the tableware and left, and soon returned, bringing someone with her. A man of peculiar shape. The body is as fat as a giant ball, but the limbs are very slender, and the face is not fat at all, which feels very uncoordinated. Based on his previous experience of watching Conan, Rhodes suspected that the fat man was fake. Mira Jane introduced. This is Lita's Lee Day. After Rhodes repeated it, Lita's also greeted Rhodes. Rhodes found that the 4 people he saw after waking up were all very unique. They were so beautiful and strange that it was difficult to forget them. With Rhodes' puzzled expression, Lita's took out his paintbrush and drawing board and quickly started drawing on his round belly. First I drew Rhodes, and then I drew the old man who just left. Then, 2 people actually jumped off Lita's body and started moving. Magical brush Malyong? Super beast fake painting? Rhodes immediately thought of the story he knew. Lita's couldn't understand what Rhodes said and just continued painting. A forest emerged, and 2 little people entered the forest and started performing. Rhodes fell to the ground in the forest. The old man's arms stretched out and became bigger, and he picked up Rhodes with both hands and took him away. Then the pink-haired lady appears, giving medicine to Rhodes. Then Rhodes wakes up, and Mira Jane comes in. These familiar plots. Rhodes was stunned. He understood that Mr. Lita's was explaining the situation to him in this way. He can indeed understand it, but this method is too fantastic. If it's not some high-tech projection technology, it's magic? Spells? After a few villains demonstrated the situation, they turned into pools of paint and flew to the drawing board as Lita's waved his brush. Then he took out a few drawing papers and showed them to Rhodes. The first one was a map, which marked the forest where Rhodes passed out and his current location. The second picture shows a wooden structure building, which is probably the house where it is now. The third picture is a big group photo, with dozens of people in the picture. Rhodes stared at the third picture for the longest time. He easily found the short old man, Mira Jane, and Lita's. Then, I saw a few familiar characters. Natsu, Erza, Gray, Fairy Tale. Although it was unbelievable, Rhodes finally realized where he was in the world. If this is the case, then the strange beast, the magic of Lita's, and the special images and colorful hair of the people I have seen all make sense. But why Fairy Tale? If it's pirates and Naruto, Rhodes knows more about the plot. Fairy Tale? He's really not familiar with it. I was able to recognize the people above because a roommate put up several posters in the dormitory. Apart from those people and Wendy and Lucy who are not in the picture, Rhodes knows almost nothing about Fairy Tale. Mira Jane noticed Rhodes' expression. What's wrong? Is there anyone you know here? Rhodes heard the voice and looked at her confusedly. Sorry, I forgot again, Mira Jane said regretfully. It would be great if Levi was here. Maybe he can understand what you were saying. Lita's asked. Can't you ask Warren to communicate with him? Mira Jane said. Even Warren's talking magic can only transmit the sound to the other person's mind. Things that are incomprehensible are still incomprehensible. Then, teach him to speak our language directly? Mira Jane nodded. This is the only way to do it now, although it is a little less efficient. I hope Levi can find other ways. If you need my help, just ask. Lita's raised his brush, indicating that he could help with the drawings during teaching, and they were 3-dimensional animated pictures. Well, I'll have to trouble you then, Lita's. Rod's literacy lessons soon began. He is in a very complicated mood now, and doesn't know what to do even if he wants to go back to school. And it's so dangerous here. Maybe you won't be so lucky next time you go out and get eaten by wolves. For a moment, Rhodes didn't know what to do, so he simply listened to the other party's arrangements. Since he is the protagonist's friend, he probably doesn't have any bad intentions. After realizing that the other party wanted to teach him how to read and speak, Rhodes started learning actively. No matter what you want to do next, you must first solve the communication problem. Mira Jane found a textbook that looked like a literacy textbook for kindergarten children from nowhere, and used the information on it to teach Rhodes how to read. What she uses to assist her teaching is a magical pen that can write light characters of different colors in the air. Seeing Rhodes' curious look, Mira Jane simply went out and borrowed a light pen to teach him how to use it step by step. She guessed that Rhodes might have never seen magic before. Rhodes found it strange that magic props could be used by people who did not understand magic. Or can he be considered a magician as long as he holds this pin? Perhaps because there was really nothing else to do, Rhodes' attention was quite concentrated. His literacy lessons went quickly, and it didn't take long for Rod to master the basic syllables. The next step is to move on to learning specific words. It's just that Mira Jane seems to be very busy. Every once in a while, someone comes to her with a piece of paper to register and stamp. It's a pity that Rhodes doesn't know the characters on it yet, and doesn't know what it says. Some people came and left in a hurry, while others curiously asked about Rhodes' situation. Mira Jane patiently explained to everyone, and also introduced the names of these people to Rhodes. It's a pity that there are too many people. If you don't understand the meaning simply by pronunciation, you can't remember any of the names after trying to memorize them. And the more people came to Mira Jane, the more embarrassed Rhodes became. He seems to have delayed Miss Mira Jane's work, and also caused a lot of trouble for other people's work. Mira Jane didn't care about this. After all, it was something the president asked her to do. Moreover, everyone only came to her to register tasks, and the distance between the infirmary and the lobby was not that far. So everyone wouldn't care after understanding the reason. You, I. Mira Jane taught her word for word, and Rod was like a child learning to speak, following her like a parrot. Mira Jane pointed to her eyes. Eyes? Look. Rhodes found that Mira Jane's eyes were very beautiful. He thought they had black pupils, but upon closer inspection he found that they were light blue. Her trademark double eyelids make her eyes look big and energetic, and her eyelashes are not long but just right. The thin eyebrows drooped slightly, looking very gentle, but paired with the droopy corners of the eyes, they seem to be a little sad. But once she smiles, her eyes will curl into slits, making her look more approachable. Rod. I'm sorry. Rhodes realized that he was a little distracted. It's okay. The class time seems to be a bit long. Mira Jane looked at the time and stood up gently on her knees. Wait a moment, I'll get some food, Mira Jane said again, matching the gesture. Rhodes seemed to understand a word or two, and by matching the other person's gestures, he could barely guess what she meant. Only then did he notice that the sky had darkened before he knew it, and he accidentally took a half-day foreign language class. Chapter 2, Part 2. I used to dislike the slow passage of time in foreign language classes, but now it's actually the other way around. Maybe it's because there's really nothing to do. The second meal after coming to this world was a big bowl of steaming ramen. The bowl is a large white porcelain bowl with strangely shaped red patterns on the outer edge. The chopsticks are ordinary brown, and judging from the feel and weight, they should be ordinary wooden chopsticks. The focus is on the oily noodles in the bowl, the dark red barbecued pork, the white and yellow poached eggs, a few green cabbage leaves, and finely chopped green onion. The beautiful presentation and color combination will whet your appetite. Rhodes picked up his chopsticks and picked up a big mouthful of noodles, but after thinking about it, he felt that it would be too ugly to eat, so he loosened his grip and left only half of it. He blew the hot air on the noodles gently, and before he could take it into his mouth, the aroma penetrated into his nose and made his mouth salivate. When the noodles came into his mouth, Rhodes admired the chef here for the delicious texture that was springy but not hard, and he also wanted to add 2 heads of garlic. It doesn't matter if you don't have it, there is also soft, juicy, and slightly sweet barbecued pork to go with it. The poached eggs are cooked just right. Biting off half the yolk in one bite is one kind of taste, and letting the remaining half of the egg yolk dip into the soup is another taste. At this time, add a piece of cooked but still a little crispy green vegetable leaf to clear your mouth, and you can start the next round of attack. As he ate, Rhodes forgot about Sven and began to slurp in his mouth. After finishing the food, I didn't forget to take a few sips of the clear noodle soup, pure, gentle, and seasoned. Sure enough, the noodles are so well made, and the soup is not much different. Rhodes let out a long breath, and a thin layer of sweat formed on his forehead. The aftertaste in his mouth and the warmth in his belly gave him a huge sense of happiness. It's so delicious, thank you. As long as you like it, Mira Jane smiled, put a glass of water on the bedside table, and left with the ramen bowl. When Mira Jane came back this time, she had a small bag in her hand and a big man beside her. The big man was wearing a dark blue high-collared coat. Through the open collar, you could see a tattoo on the left side of his neck. Same as the logo on the ramen bowl, except the color is black. Only then did Rhodes remember that seemed to be Fairy Tail's logo. It seems that Mira Jane's sign has never been seen. Elfman, my brother, Mira Jane introduced. There is a scar on the corner of Elfman's right eye, which makes him look a bit ferocious even though he doesn't express his expression on purpose. Rhodes wrote down the name Elfman, but didn't understand the word brother. But looking at Elfman's expression and the same white hair as hers, this is probably her brother, right? Chapter 3, Part 1. Elfman came here pushing a wheelchair. Under Mirajane's command, he helped Rhodes into a wheelchair and pushed Rhodes around the guild. In fact, Rhodes felt that he should be able to walk, but his left leg just hurt a little. But since it was someone's kindness, he accepted it. In the first place Elfman took him to was the bathroom. Rhodes felt a little embarrassed, but he had to thank the other party for his thoughtfulness. He really needed to solve a small problem. Bathrooms, infirmary, library, kitchen, all necessary facilities are available in the guild. If necessary, there is absolutely no problem in making this place your home. Along the corridor, Elfman pushed Rhodes to the mission hall, the main activity place for guild members, which is also a tavern. There are more than 20 long tables in the center of the hall, with round tables on the edges, and a dozen stools at the front desk. It is not a problem to accommodate 100 people drinking together. Because it was getting late, the tavern that was bustling during the day was now quiet. Only a girl with purple hair and glasses with a red bow was playing with the tables and chairs. Mirajane waved to her. "Thank you, Lucky. Is everyone leaving?" Everyone went home. It was a very busy day today, but luckily there wasn't much fighting. Lucky kept moving her hands and pushed the chair under the table. "I'm going back soon to cool down the dust with water," Elfman said. "Does she want to go back and take a shower?" Mirajane has long been accustomed to Lucky's way of speaking. "Sorry, I have something to ask of the president today, so I left everything in the tavern to you." "It doesn't matter. That's what the president asked you to do. He seems to be quite handsome." "Who is he?" "I don't know about this either." Mirajane glanced at Rhodes and smiled apologetically. "We are still in the stage of teaching him to speak common language." "Hey, it sounds like it's a lot of trouble." Lucky asked no more questions and placed the last chair. "Well, see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." Usually no one is left in the guild at night, but Rhodes' situation obviously means he can only stay here. But it wasn't appropriate to leave him here alone, so Mirajane decided to stay with Elfman tonight. After briefly visiting the guild, Rhodes took evening classes with Mirajane for a while. Rhodes found that there seemed to be no electrical appliances here, and everything on the table and hanging on the wall were oil lamps or candles. "But I seem to have seen a ceiling fan in the pub before, and I don't know what it uses as energy source." During class, Elfman went back, probably to pick up things he needed for the overnight stay. At night, Rhodes slept alone in the ward, while Mirajane and Elfman found another room to rest. "Good night. I'm right next door. If you need anything, just call my name." Mirajane used words and actions to barely make Rhodes understand what she said. "Thank you." This is one of the few words that Rhodes has learned, and he has said it countless times today. The lights had been extinguished, and the light of a crescent moon in the sky poured in through the window. Rhodes leaned on the bedside and turned his head to look out the window. There were no sudden car lights coming in, no roar of engines, and no annoying buzzing of the air conditioner. Many of the things he hated before were gone, but he couldn't be happy anymore. Outside, it's a completely strange world. When people are free, they tend to have random thoughts, curiosity and fear about the unfamiliar world, expectations and uneasiness about the unfamiliar environment. During the day, Mirajane, Lidas, Elfman and others were with me, so I didn't feel too bad about it. At night, when the lights go out and a person is in darkness, all kinds of thoughts come up uncontrollably. Can you go back, or will you stay here forever? What will life be like in the future? Good morning. Did you sleep well last night? Good morning. Of course Rhodes didn't sleep well, but faced with the people who came to care about him early in the morning, he could only brace himself. However, his answer is not important, because the answer is already written on his face. Are you really not used to it? Mirajane saw the sleepiness on his face and encouraged. It's almost time to go out and do some activities today. Elfman, can you take Rod to wash up? Elfman flexed his muscles. If you are a man, cheer up. Rhodes shrank back and wanted to fight. My injury hasn't healed yet. Elfman, I know, sister. Today's schedule is similar to yesterday, nothing more than eating, drinking, studying, and trying to communicate. It's just that Rhodes can walk today. Although his left leg is still a little stiff, he can already walk to the front of the tavern by himself, sit next to the counter, and watch the several waiters in the tavern busy. The sun slowly rose, and the guild gradually became lively. Some people ordered breakfast and chatted with acquaintances, while others went to the bulletin board to read the paper posted on it. Occasionally someone would tear off a piece of paper and come to Mirajane to register, and then leave in a hurry. Some people just stood there and watched. Lidas, whom Rhodes met yesterday, also came to the guild early, set up his drawing board, adjusted the colors, and started painting. Mira Jane did her job with a sunny smile, serving dishes, cleaning tables, and registering tasks. Sometimes I also talk to people. When I have free time, I will teach Rhodes a few words again. Rhodes curiously looked at the people entering the guild one by one, listening hard to everyone's conversations, hoping to find someone he was familiar with, or catch some words he could understand. But most of the time it felt like he was watching a foreign movie without subtitles. Although he was getting more and more accustomed to the language, it was still difficult to extract the understandable parts. And although many of the people who came in had distinctive characteristics, Rhodes couldn't recognize any of them. Until a young man with cherry-colored hair kicked open the door and shouted, "Old man, where is the dragon? Where are the people who were attacked by the dragon? Natsu, stop making so much noise so early in the morning." "Hey, Macau," Natsu said to the middle-aged man with short purple hair. "Tell me quickly, where is the old man? Where is the man who was attacked by the dragon?" A blue kitten came in behind Natsu, jumped on the table, and explained to a middle-aged airplane man with a pipe in his mouth, "Love." Natsu heard outside that the president rescued a man who was attacked by a dragon, so he hurried over. "Dragon? Is there such a thing?" Wakaba blew out a smoke ring. "I have heard that a wild beast went rampant in the eastern forest and destroyed a large number of trees." "That's it." Natsu put his hands on the table, leaned forward, and asked hurriedly, "Then, did a dragon appear? Did the old man fight the dragon?" "How do I know?" Wakaba spread his hands. "The president went to attend a regular meeting yesterday. He doesn't look like he has fought. However, the president did bring back someone." Macau took over the conversation and pointed at Rhodes at the front desk with his thumb. "That is, he seemed to be very injured yesterday." "Hello?" Natsu had already rushed to the front desk. Rhodes was staring at Natsu. Chapter 3, Part 2. With his cherry-colored hair, grid-patterned scarf, and black coat, this should be Natsu. Having confirmed his location again, Rhodes didn't know whether to be happy or unhappy. Fortunately, he remembered that Tingda also mentioned that Fairy Tail has a happy ending, and that no one can beat me in my BGM. So as long as you stay here, you don't have to worry too much about safety issues. What makes him unhappy is naturally that he is completely sure that he is in a different world. Although there are a few people whose names he knows here, in fact, there is no one he is familiar with. At this time, Natsu had already rushed over and looked at him. At #%*, although he could see the eagerness on the other person's face, Rhodes really didn't understand what he was shouting, so he had to look at Mira Jane for help. Mira Jane stood next to Rhodes. "Natsu, calm down. Rhodes still has a hard time understanding our language." Natsu was stunned. "Huh? What's that?" Mira Jane said. "Maybe the language in his hometown is completely different from ours. He is already studying hard now." Natsu clenched his fists, unwilling to accept it. We finally got the information about the dragon." "Are you kidding me?" "Natsu, your expression is too fierce." Mira Jane motioned to Natsu to be gentle and stop scaring people. "Try to ask leaders for help, otherwise you have to wait for the president to come back, or wait for Levy to come back and try." Chapter 4, Part 1. Natsu didn't have the patience to wait for the president or Levy to come back. When he heard that Lidas could help, he immediately dragged him over. Under Lidas's drawings, Mira Jane's gestures, and soft words, Rhodes finally understood what they wanted to ask. But he has never seen a dragon. He has only seen a spotted bear that looks like a pig and was almost beaten to death. Are there dragons in this world? Rhodes thought about the magic, and it seemed that it was not surprising that there were dragons. Natsu was very unwilling. "Mira, when will the old man come back?" Mira Jane replied, "Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Regular meetings usually don't last long." Natsu made a decision immediately. "Happy, we won't go to work for the next few days until the old man comes back." The blue kitten raised her hand in response. "Love?" Natsu strode to the table and sat down. "Mira, I want to eat the flame-set meal." "Okay, coming right away." Mira Jane reported what they wanted to eat to the kitchen. Natsu doesn't mean any harm. He's just a little impatient. Mira Jane knew the reason why Natsu wanted to find the dragon, but it was a long story. It was difficult to explain the current situation to Rhodes, so she had to try her best to tell him that Natsu meant no harm. Rhodes nodded. Although he didn't know the specific situation, it was normal for the protagonist of a hot-blooded comic to be impatient and impulsive. At this time, the blue cat stood on the table and raised his hand. "Mila, we want a grilled fish." Rhodes' eyes widened. Mau Mau spoke. Mira Jane smiled and said, "Happy is no ordinary cat." Rhodes nodded. It was not unacceptable for cats in the magical world to be able to talk. However, Rod was surprised again by the dinner plate that Lucky brought out from the kitchen. There were 2 plates and a cup on the tray. Although the shape of the food could be seen in the contents, they were clearly still burning with blazing flames. Is this thing really food? Mira Jane tried her best to introduce to Rhodes. Those are flame pasta, flame fried chicken, and flame drinks, which are cooked using a special method. Seeing Natsu grabbing the flame with his bare hands and stuffing it into his mouth, Rhodes nodded hesitantly. It's normal for the food in the magical world to be a bit special. Mira Jane felt that Rhodes might have misunderstood something. In fact, Natsu was the only one in the entire guild who liked this. In the following time, Rhodes met all kinds of strange people and some interesting magic. He even witnessed a fight started by Elfman and Natsu, which ended up involving a quarter of the tavern. Seeing Elfman fighting with someone, Mira Jane just watched with a smile and did nothing except telling Rhodes to step back. Rhodes couldn't help but doubt his own judgment. Could it be that this Miss Mira Jane was actually not that gentle, but just couldn't let go when facing a stranger like him? I had previously thought that the guild the protagonist belonged to would be a lively guild, but now it seems that it is too lively. Time passed in such an atmosphere that was both peaceful and restless. It wasn't until the next day, the afternoon of the 3rd day after Rhodes came here, that something changed. The president is back. There was also a handsome blonde guy with him. Many girls gathered around and exclaimed, "It's Hayakuya's Shipiki. It's Shipiki who is number 1 on the list of magics I want to be my boyfriend the most. So handsome." Shipiki raised his index and middle fingers together and greeted the girls with a soft smile, which triggered another burst of screams. In the tavern, a handsome man wearing glasses and a green coat showed a panicked expression and then took advantage of the chaos to sneak out of the guild. Mira Jane held the tray with a smile on her face. "Welcome back, President. You've had a hard journey." People in the tavern greeted Makarov one after another, and Natsu rushed over. "Old man, I'm finally back. I have something to ask you." Makarov raised a palm to stop Natsu. "I roughly know what you want to ask, but it's hard to explain clearly now. Please wait a moment." Natsu wanted to say something else, but seeing the president's serious expression, he just looked at him angrily. Makarov asked Mira Jane, "Is the child okay?" "His name is Rhodes. He has recovered well from his injury. He has a little trouble communicating," Mira Jane said. "I have been teaching him universal skills. I have spoken, but it will take some time." "Yes, thank you for your hard work." Makarov nodded. "I have a faster way here. Let's take him to the infirmary first." Mira Jane glanced at Shipiki, who was surrounded by girls, and nodded. "Okay." Rhodes followed Mira Jane back to the infirmary in confusion. "Do you need to change the dressing? His injuries have recovered very quickly in the past 2 days, and now there is only a bandage on his forehead." Rhodes estimates that the medicine he used is not ordinary medicine. In doubt, Makarov had already brought Shipiki into the infirmary. After Shipiki came in, he didn't hesitate for even half a second. He immediately went to Mira Jane and made a gentleman's courtesy. "You are Miss Mira Jane. You are really more dazzling than in the magazine. This is the first time we meet. I am Shipiki from Cyan Pegasus. Please allow me to buy you a drink." Mira Jane held her cheek with one hand. "Now is not the time to say such things, is it?" "Ah, that's right. I'm rude." Shipiki knelt down on one knee in an exaggerated manner and stretched out a hand. "So are you free tonight?" Although Rhodes didn't quite understand what he was talking about, he always felt that this person was quite unique even in fairy tale. "No, there seems to be someone in the guild who looks very similar to him." "Who is he?" "Now is not the time to think about this." Rhodes stood up, bowed lightly towards Makarov, and said in a somewhat stiff common language, "Thank you for saving me." Makarov smiled. "Isn't this a good lesson?" "But it's not me who saved you." Rhodes showed a puzzled expression. Makarov's right hand suddenly stretched and enlarged, and he directly grasped Shipiki's entire body and grabbed it. "I didn't invite you here specifically to let you harass the girls in our guild." Rhodes looked at Makarov's hand in shock. "Old Luffy? Old Choji?" After being released, Shipiki straightened his clothes and hairstyle, and seemed to be shining with handsomeness. "I already understand the content of the entrustment. I want to help him master basic common language as quickly as possible, right?" "That's right." Makarov nodded, on the premise that his body cannot be damaged. Shibiki nodded. "Of course, it can be done with my magic. However, receiving a large amount of information at once may give you a headache in a short period of time. Is this okay?" Mira Jane struggled to convey Shipiki's intention to Rhodes and asked for his opinion. Use magic to learn a language quickly, at the cost of headaches in the process? Rhodes nodded decisively. Is there any choice between using magic to get a headache for a few minutes and giving him a headache for a few months? Long-term pain is worse than short-term pain. Makarov nodded. Then, let's get started. Shibiki raised his hands, and a golden magic circle appeared under his hands, and in the middle of the magic circle was a keyboard. As Shibiki's fingers tapped, several screens composed of magical lights appeared in the air. Chapter 4, Part 2. Boxes and lines of text quickly passed by, and in the end only a screen was left. Rhodes was dazzled. This thing is really magic. Isn't it some future technology? It looks like a scene from a science fiction movie. Mira Jane suddenly realized. Is this the magic of ancient documents? So that's the case. No wonder the president wants to invite you. Zapiji smiled slightly. Finally, can you confirm that you only need basic common language? In fact, I also have 100 techniques for chatting up girls and 80 ways to please girls. Do you want to teach them together? Makarov waved his hand. Please be sure not to teach weird things like that. What a pity. Shipiki pointed at Rhodes' forehead, and golden light enveloped him. Rhodes didn't know how much wealth he had just missed. He just felt his head swelled and a lot of information poured in. Pronunciation, writing, word formation, sentence structure. The headache was more severe than Rhodes imagined. The pain was like being pinched by a door, and he couldn't help but cover his head and scream. Rhodes. Makarov and Mira Jane looked a little unbearable, but fortunately the process ended quickly. The golden light dissipated, and the keyboard and screen in front of Shipiki also disappeared. It's done. Rhodes fell on the bed, staring up at the ceiling blankly. He still covered his head with his hands, breathing heavily. Finally, it's over, Mira Jane praised. This is a very good sentence. Huh. Rhodes said in surprise. I can understand you. Chapter 5, Part 1. It's solved. Shipiki said to Makarov, President Makarov, then I will go back first. Ah, thank you for your hard work. Makarov said, I will fill in the order form later and send it to the Cyan Pegasus together with the entrustment fee. Rhodes said quickly, Thank you, President, for your life-saving grace, and thank you, Mr. Shipiki, for your help. I am moved by heaven and earth. Mira Jane covered her mouth and chuckled. What kind of expression is that? Is Rhodes going to become like Lucky? It's so interesting. Makarov looked at Shipiki, as if asking what was going on. Ah, well, because it's just knowledge that's been crammed in. It will take some time to digest, Shipiki said sheepishly, so he may occasionally fail to express what he means when he speaks recently. Just give me a little help to correct this, or try again when my magic improves a bit. No, it's not necessary. Please allow me to thank you for this. Rhodes said that he didn't want to experience the splitting headache feeling again. It was more practical to learn knowledge on his own. Definitely not afraid of pain. Makarov nodded. That's it. The commission ends here. Mira Jane sent Shipiki off, while Rhodes was stopped by Makarov. Rhodes, right? Did Mira tell you the general situation? This, because of the language problem, I only understand part of it. Rhodes said, You rescued me from the forest, right? Makarov said, No, to be precise. I just brought you back from the forest. Rhodes showed a puzzled expression. The beast that attacked me, wasn't it defeated by you with all your hands and feet? Makarov was not in the mood to correct Rhodes' wording for the time being, and sat cross-legged on the chair next to the bed. He was even taller when sitting than when standing. Rhodes felt it was impolite to look down at the old man, so he sat down obediently by the bed. Makarov said slowly, Actually, I went there because someone witnessed monsters running rampant, including strange birds, giant frogs, wolves, and even dragons. The mayor believes that if a large group of monsters appears in the eastern forest, it will affect the safety of the entire Magnolia City. So he entrusted me to investigate. In fact, the main reason why Makarov went to investigate in person was because poorly Yusika lived in that forest, and he was a little worried. But when I got there was only a dolphin bear carcass, a badly damaged forest, and you lying on the ground. The more Rhodes heard, the more frightened he became. He just felt that he was so lucky to survive in that situation. Maybe I should also thank the one who knocked me away. It was called a dolphin bear? A strange name. Makarov asked, Do you have any impressions about the herd? Rhodes shook his head. I don't remember any of this at all, but I seemed to hear a lot of strange calls before I passed out. The forest was quite silent before. Makarov nodded. So the beast's rampage probably happened around the time he fainted. Or, It was simply a wave of beasts caused by Rhodes accidentally doing something. So, why did you go to the forest? I don't know. Rhodes looked confused. You may not believe it, but I just fell down and was in the forest when I got up. That's it. Makarov thought thoughtfully and suddenly moved from one place to another. He knew several such cases. For example, Polyusica, who previously treated Rhodes, suddenly appeared decades ago. According to her, she came from a world called Idolas. There is also Natsu, who suddenly appeared nearby 6 years ago. At that time, he could speak but could not read, but claimed that he had learned how to write. Rhodes' language barrier seems to be more similar to Natsu. Moreover, when Natsu appeared, he was looking for a dragon, and when Rhodes appeared, he was accompanied by the legend of the dragon. There might be some connection between these two people. Makarov guessed that these two people might have been affected by the space magic of powerful magicians on other continents and transferred here directly. I roughly understand the situation. Rhodes looked at him in surprise. You believe it so easily? Why not? Makarov looked into his eyes. I am a little confident in identifying whether young people are lying. But Rhodes realized, oh, yes, this is a magical world. Isn't it strange that someone like me suddenly appears? Makarov asked. So what are your plans next? I have nowhere to go for the time being. Rhodes has been thinking about it for 2 days, and staying here now should be the best choice. Now when he goes out for a walk, he is worried that he will encounter some dolphins, bears, dolphins, and tigers as soon as he goes out. If he is unlucky, he will burp. It's just that fairy tale should be full of magicians, ordinary people like me. In order to survive safely, Rhodes could only bite the bullet and asked, "Can you let me stay?" Certainly. So casual. Rhodes looked at the old man in front of him. Didn't he hesitate at all? You don't even know my origins, Makarov asked. Would you like to tell me? Rhodes hesitated. He didn't know where to start. Then tell me when you have figured out how to say it. Makarov smiled kindly. There are many homeless children in the guild. Some of them can't even tell where they come from. They were just as uneasy as you at that time. But it doesn't matter. It's because of uneasiness that we need companions. And that's why there is a guild. Everyone supports each other to survive strong and treats each other as family. This is the guild and this is fairy tale. Makarov told Rhodes his views on the guild. His eyes seemed to be shining. For the first time, Rhodes learned about the purpose of fairy tale, which was different from the mission guilds he knew in games and anime. Fairy tale seems to be more than just an agency, but a more warm place. The process of joining a guild is very simple. Makarov took Rhodes to the front to find Mira and added Rhodes' name to the member list. This is the city of Magnolia located in the east of the kingdom of Fiori. It has a population of about 60,000. It has been a city where magic has been popular since ancient times. Fairy tale is the only regular guild in this city. And then this. Because Rhodes extremely lacked common sense about this place, Mira Jane had to start with the geographical location. When talking about fairy tale, she took out a seal-like thing and asked Rhodes to choose a favorite color and the location to engrave the coat of arms. Rhodes rolled up his sleeves and asked Mira Jane to help put the blue coat of arms on his left arm. The process is as simple as regular stamping. Rhodes touched the position of the coat of arms, and the feeling was no different from the previous touch. It seemed that it was magical again. This shouldn't fade, right? Of course not. Mira Jane put away the seal and explained. This coat of arms represents the wizard of fairy tale, and you can use it to prove your identity no matter where you go. Mage. Rhodes covered his arm and asked anxiously, but I don't understand magic at all. What should I do? Will I be kicked out? How is it possible? If you want, you can just start learning from now on, Mira Jane said. It's just that it was a little difficult to find a commission that could be completed at first. You don't understand magic? Makarov pointed at Rhodes' chest. Isn't that your magic prop? Rhodes picked up his necklace pendant and looked at it. Chapter 5, Part 2. It was a capital letter L with a gold-rimmed circle on a blue background. If you look closely, there are mysterious patterns inside. You said this is a magic item? No way. This thing is the software icon of a certain 5v5 competitive game. It was a gift given to Rhodes by his roommate Zhang Day on his birthday. Although it seems to be quite exquisitely made and should not be very cheap, it is just an ordinary pendant. Is it possible that Tatsuya, that thick-browed man with big eyes, is actually a magician? Chapter 6, Part 1. There is no doubt that it is a very good quality magic prop. Magic power doesn't lie. Makarov can tell at a glance whether the pendant is a magic item. Maybe Rhodes could survive in such a beast tide because of this pendant. Even though he didn't know how to use it himself, Rhodes took off the necklace, and the thin metal chains were piled up. The pendant lay quietly in the palm of his hand. The golden letters and blue round bottom reflected the scattered natural light. I read it over and over again, but apart from the fact that it was very good-looking, I couldn't figure out what was special about it. Tatsuya's competition. Yeme gave me the instructions at that time, Rhodes said in his native language. Makarov and Mira Jane looked at him confused. Rhodes handed the necklace to Makarov and asked, "President, do you know how to make the most of this thing? You don't necessarily need to know magic to use magic props, but when you can use it, you can count it as knowing magic." Makarov took the necklace and set a string of tongue twisters. Rhodes thought about the logic for a moment, and then saw that the ordinary necklace in his hand glowed in the opponent's hand. "I see. It's a prop similar to the Star Spirit Key. Only you can use this pendant." Star Spirit Key? Rhodes didn't understand. What was that? Mira Jane thoughtfully helped explain, and even drew a schematic diagram for Rhodes with a light pen. Celestial spirit magic is magic that signs a contract with the celestial spirits and summons them from the celestial spirit world to help. People who use celestial spirit magic need to hold a special key, which is a type of holding magic. Mira Jane's painting skills are a bit poor, and can be said to be abstract compared to Lita's. This means that Rhodes cannot understand what kind of creature the Protoss is, but he can probably understand what kind of magic it is. He used a word he could understand. Summoner? That's pretty much what it means. Makarov returned the necklace to Rhodes. "I will teach you the basics of magic, and I will also tell you the tricks of Protoss magic that I know. In addition, the guild's library also has information about celestial spirit magic. What do you think? Do you want to learn this kind of magic?" "You have to learn." Rhodes nodded. Summoner. Rhodes can almost think of what this pendant in the shape of the LOL game icon can be used to summon. Of those more than 100 heroes, just a few powerful ones should be invincible, right? Then it's decided. I will teach you magic later. Now let's talk about some practical issues. Actual question? Rhodes was kicked out. His injuries have almost healed, so he needs to move out and cannot occupy the infirmary all the time. Rhodes was a little nervous about finding a house to live in a strange city, or rather a strange world. Fortunately, the president helped him introduce a house not far from the guild, less than 1 kilometer away in a straight line. Rhodes has already gone to see it. It should be regarded as a retail store facing the street. The first floor is used as a shop and the second floor can be occupied. The landlord's name is Goodman Riel, a young man in his 20s or 80s. He had been living here a few years ago, but he moved out after getting married and only came here during the day when he was opening a shop. The house is fully equipped with kitchen, bathroom, and the bathroom even has a bathtub. The bedroom is not very big, but it is more than enough for one person to live in. The rent is 80,000 J per month. Rhodes is not very sensitive to the currency here, but according to Mira Jane, this price is considered very cheap in Magnolia. For this price, the reason given by the landlord was that the second floor would be idle anyway, and having a wizard living there would also increase a sense of security. Rhodes felt that the other party might be looking at the president's face. It was said that he would occasionally go to the guild's tavern to drink. However, even if the rent was not high, Rhodes couldn't afford it. The money used to pay the rent was lent to him by the president, totaling 150,000 J, and the remaining 70,000 was used for food expenses and buying some daily necessities. 150,000 J seemed to be a big number just by hearing the number, but after seeing the denomination of the banknotes, Rhodes felt a lot more at ease. These 1,000 yuan banknotes and 10,000 yuan banknotes, it is estimated that the actual value must be much lower than RMB. However, after borrowing money like this, Rhodes realized that he didn't seem to have paid for the meals and medicines he had taken these past few days. Especially those medicines, which are so effective, must not be cheap. Then there is the remuneration for Mr. Shipiki who helped him learn the language. Logically speaking, he should pay for it. It's just that I didn't understand anything at the time, and my mind was so confused that I forgot to ask how much it would cost. How can anyone owe a huge amount of debt just after time travel? With mixed emotions, Rhodes went to a nearby store to buy toiletries such as towels, as well as a few changes of clothes. Then he realized that the money didn't seem to be well spent. A slightly thicker towel costs 500 J, a 3-piece set of toothbrush, toothpaste, and cup costs 1000 J, soap 100 J, shampoo 500 J, add-in necessities such as toilet paper, sheets, pillows, and quilts, and you can easily spend a small amount of 20,000. Does the remaining 50,000 J cover enough for a month's food expenses? Rhodes recalled that the flame-set meal Natsu had seemed to cost more than 1,000 J. Ordinary food is probably not that expensive. If it doesn't work, you can still make it yourself. Spending another 20,000 J to buy a few more clothes should be about the same. Let's cut it in half and keep an extra 10,000 J just in case. Fortunately, it's summer now. Rhodes was thankful for a second, and then he was shocked to realize that he might have to buy another mosquito net. Wealth has shrunk again. After busy for a long time, Rhodes finally bought all the things he wanted to buy and took them back. While it was still dark, Rhodes decided to go to the guild for dinner. There are not as many people in the guild as there were during the day. Most of the remaining people wanted to have dinner here just like Rhodes. Most of them were drunk, some were fast asleep, and some were arguing with others with red faces, feeling like they were about to start a fight at any time. Natsu, who was chasing Rhodes earlier to ask questions, is not here either. He should have gotten the answer from the president. Mira Jane placed the plates and cups on the tray on the guest table, then looked at Rod. Rod, you are back. Have you finished all the moving matters? That's almost it. I'm going to have dinner here. Is that okay? Of course. What do you want to eat? Rhodes thought for a while. It should be the same as the one just now. It seems to be delicious. Okay. A super spicy curry rice. Mira Jane looked at the warrior and clenched her fist to cheer him up. Be sure to finish what you ordered. Wait a minute. Rhodes quickly stopped him. You know my common language is not very good. I seem to have heard a thrilling word just now. What kind of rice is that? Mira Jane blinked and said innocently, curry rice. What about the previous modifier? It's just super spicy. Chapter 6, Part 2. Rhodes raised a hand. I don't think the words just and just are used in this way. Mira Jane pointed to the person who ordered in front of her. No problem. Don't you think he ate deliciously? Rhodes collapsed. He breathed fire. Hey, I thought Rhodes would like this. I beg you to absolutely, definitely help me change it to a normal one. What a pity. I thought I could see a funny expression. Also, I only needed to say must in that sentence. Mira Jane left with a chuckle, not even forgetting to help Rhodes correct his language habits. Rhodes couldn't figure out whether this girl really had a bad personality or just liked to watch the fun. She was not like this yesterday. Is it because I don't need to take care of myself now? Rhodes has mixed feelings. Please return that gentle and considerate Mira Jane. Chapter 7, Part 1. Fairy Tale's Secret Beef Curry Rice. You can smell the aroma of curry from a long distance away. When the plate was placed on the table, the fragrance of rice immediately filled my nose. This rice must be made of high-quality rice. Rod picked up the spoon. On the left side were brown-red curry soup, evenly chopped beef, potatoes, and carrots. On the right is rice that looks even whiter against the background of the soup. The color and aroma on both sides are so attractive that Rhodes doesn't know where to start. This happy entanglement didn't last for a few seconds. At the urging of the Five Zong Temple, Rhodes chose to move the spoon from the middle. The curry and rice went into his mouth at the same time. It was salty, fresh, and fragrant, with a slight spicy taste that filled his mouth, making his tongue and teeth work involuntarily. Rhodes is not a big fan of spicy food, and just a little bit of spicy food made beads of sweat break out on his forehead. But when the spiciness wears off, you can actually enjoy the sweetness of the rice and the aroma of the beef. Rhodes was immersed in this delicious plate of curry rice and couldn't help himself. Rhodes seems to be very involved in eating every time, and even my appetite has improved. Mira Jane's voice sounded. Does Rod like food very much? Of course I like delicious food. I didn't pay much attention to it before, but now I seem to enjoy the process of tasting food more and more. Rhodes thought for a while and added, maybe it's because I was hungry a few days ago, or maybe because I almost died. I started to cherish things that I didn't cherish before. Mira Jane seemed to have regained her gentle and considerate look. In this case, you have to work hard. The menu here is very long. I will work hard, huh? Rhodes couldn't help but laugh. Working hard to eat? Working hard for the sake of eating? No matter which way you say it, something seems wrong. A delicious curry rice can reduce Rod's living expenses by 500 J. From his own words, it is well worth the money. In addition, he asked Mira Jane to make up for the food expenses for the past few days, and his wallet shrank again. Mira Jane was a little worried that Rhodes wouldn't be able to survive the next month. Actually, there is no need to pay back these in a hurry. Those few meals can be regarded as condolences. It's only natural to give money for meals. We can't help with medical expenses for the time being. We can't let the guild bear the meal money anymore. Even though the money was stolen from the guild president, it's a temporary loan. Oh, borrow it for now. Rhodes looked at the menu carefully. If it was just a meal, the cheaper one would cost a few $100s. If you have a larger meal but only order ordinary food, then a few thousand J will be about the same. Of course, if you are in a hurry to have a meal and order whatever is delicious, then there is no cap. Rhodes, who wanted to enjoy the delicious food, suddenly felt pressure and asked, "Is there any work in the guild that can be completed without magic?" Mira Jane pointed her chin with her index finger and thought for a moment. "If you want, you can work part-time as a waiter in a tavern. Because you have to leave time to learn magic, the salary can only be about 120,000 J per month. Is that okay?" Rhodes did not hesitate. "Of course, thank you. For a magician, 120,000 J is not too much. For a stronger one like Natsu, he can earn it back in a day or two by taking on a mission to wipe out bandits. For the weaker ones, as long as they take on some life-related tasks that are within the city, they can earn 120,000 yuan in less than half a month. Only those low-level magicians who can only accept small tasks of a few thousand J will worry about this little money." Unfortunately, Rhodes now belongs to a quasi-magic apprentice who is even lower than the low-level magicians. This kind of work is already considered taken care of for him, and Mira Jane even specifically mentioned setting aside time for him to learn magic. In addition, one of the perks of being a waiter is that he takes care of 2 meals. In this way, after deducting the rent and some daily expenses, it will take about half a year to repay the money lent him by the president. Mr. Shipiki's commission fees and Ms. Poorly Yusika's medical expenses will take a little longer. However, Rhodes feels that after a few months, he should be able to take on some wizard missions, and repaying the debt should be faster. There is a long way to go. Since he decided to be a waiter for a while, Rhodes stayed that day to help with the cleaning. Tables and chairs must be wiped and arranged neatly, the floor must be swept, the door must be locked after confirming that no one is stranded, and the lights must be blown out before leaving. Rhodes found a little bit of the feeling of doing duty with his classmates in middle school. After everyone said goodbye to each other, they went home. Elfman usually waited for Mira Jane when he didn't go out to work. Rhodes would walk with the two of them for a short while, and during the chat, he learned a shocking news. "So Elfman is your brother? I always thought he was my brother." "Oh, I'm not yet at the age where I'll be happy if I'm praised for being young." Mira Jane stroked her cheek with her right hand, saying she wouldn't be happy, but in fact she didn't stop smiling. Elfman also seemed very happy. "If you're a man, you should be more mature." Rhodes was deep in thought and accidentally praised his 2 siblings. "Am I the kind of person who is good at talking? I don't even know." Because Rod came back a little late, the landlord had already locked the door and gone home. Rhodes took out the key himself, opened the door and went in. It was pitch dark inside the house. Rhodes used the moonlight coming from the window to reach the stairs and walked upstairs carefully. The whole house is made of wood, and the stairs are naturally the same. Fortunately, there was no creaking sound when Rhodes stepped on it, so it shouldn't be too old. After entering the house, Rhodes found matches and lit the candles on the table. The technological level here is not very good. There is no electric light. Many people still use candles and oil lamps. Although there are lamps that use magic as energy, and the prices have dropped a lot in recent years, they are still much more expensive than oil lamps and the like. So the landlord didn't prepare any magic devices for this old house that he hadn't lived in for many years. There is convenient tap water, but if you want to use hot water, you have to boil it immediately. After Rhodes washed up, he wiped his body with cold water and wondered whether he should take a bath in the guild's bathroom. "It seems that I will need to buy some household appliances in the future. Should this be called household magic props? Money, money." Rhodes, who left campus in a strange way, had to worry about making a living. Thinking about the salary from working in the tavern and the reward from the wizard mission, Rhodes began to look forward to the life after learning magic. With unlimited expectations for his future life, Rhodes fell into a deep sleep. Rhodes opened his eyes, and the sun shone slantingly on his face through the window. He sat up suddenly and said, "Late. Fresh apples, crispy pears. Macaroni is cheap. Fresh melons, take a look." Chapter 7, Part 2. Noisy sales calls could be heard outside the window, and Rhodes suddenly felt a sense of dislocation. He lay back heavily and raised his arms to cover his eyes. "It seems that I don't have to go to morning class for a long time. Is that gratifying?" After being quiet for a while, Rhodes got up, washed up, put on the white t-shirt and black cropped pants he bought yesterday, plucked his bangs a few times and went downstairs. After a while, he ran back to the room, found the necklace on the bedside table, put it on and left. "Good morning, Mr. Rhodes. Did you sleep well?" Landlord Goodman Riel greeted warmly. "Brother Goodman, you're here so early. I just arrived and it's about to open." The windows on the first floor are in one piece. a large wooden board about 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. After opening a few buckles on the inside, you can pull it completely outward and fall down. After unfolding the 2 wooden legs folded on the side, it immediately becomes a platform used as a shelf. Rhodes looked at it and found it interesting. No wonder the door was not opened in the middle, but placed on the side. He helped Goodman set up the awning and prepared to leave. Wait a minute, think of it as a thank you gift. This is for you. Goodman threw an object the size of a keychain towards Rhodes. Rhodes caught it and put it in the palm of his hand. He saw it was a small wooden sign measuring 2 to 3 centimeters with indecipherable words engraved on it and a red rope tied with a beautiful knot. What's this? Although the peace talisman is just an ordinary handicraft, the wooden sign was carved by me myself, and the knot was tied by my wife. Goodman smiled and said, I heard that magicians occasionally take on dangerous commissions, so please pay attention to safety. Goodman's store mainly deals in handicrafts such as wood carvings and woven hangings. I made one while stocking up yesterday. Thank you. Rhodes wanted to say that it was too early for him to take on a dangerous mission, but he didn't say it out loud and was just careful to accept the other party's kindness. He found that the loneliness and uneasiness of surviving alone in a different world seemed to be washed away a little bit. Chapter 8. Good morning, Miss Mira Jane, Miss Lucky. When Rhodes arrived at the guild, Mira Jane and Lucky were already wiping the table. Although it was wiped last night, it still needs to be wiped again before starting business. Good morning, Rod. Mira Jane's smile was still as bright as ever. Also, please don't use the honorific. Just call me Mira like everyone else. Me too, just call me Lucky. Mira? Lucky? Rhodes tried to shout and said politely, then I have overstepped my bounds. Mira corrected. This context does not reach the level of using transgression. Lucky held her face, half of her hands covered by her long purple hair, showing a narcissistic expression. Perhaps Rhodes wants to express that he treats us as princesses or queens? Rhodes denied. Sorry, there is no such thing. After helping a little bit, Rhodes sat at the counter and ate breakfast, which was a very ordinary combination of milk and sandwich. The price is much cheaper than the curry rice I had yesterday, but it tastes great. I don't know if it was an illusion, but it was obviously the same food, but it seemed to taste better the day I woke up. Maybe I was too hungry at that time. Rhodes was half leaning against the counter while enjoying his breakfast while looking at the people entering the guild one after another. There are many different styles of clothing in this world, including Chinese cheongsam and mandarin jacket, Japanese kimono and yukata, and European dresses and tuxedos. Modern and simple casual wear sweatshirts like what Rod is wearing now are not uncommon. In addition to these, there are also some quite peculiar costumes. For example, there is a very beautiful girl who wears double horns on her head, a tiger print chest high-slit dress, tiger print sleeves on her arms, and long tiger stripes on her feet. The boots and soles are even shaped like tiger claws. The whole person looks like a little tiger with long horns, full of wild beauty. That's Honey Chicken Tag. Mira introduced. She's nicknamed the Ghost Princess. Rhodes has been staring at her since the beginning. Could it be that? Mira showed a gossipy expression and enthusiastically gave Rhodes advice. Miji likes fighting very much. If you care, go and have a fight with her. If you can win, she will definitely look at her differently. No, it's not. There were a lot of flaws in this statement, so Rhodes sorted out his thoughts. I just think her costume is unusual, and aren't we all magicians? Why do we like fighting? Mira asked strangely. Shouldn't magicians be good at fighting? Demon. Rhodes was silent. Could it be that my perception is strange? Thinking about it carefully, during the past few days in the guild, I often saw everyone fighting and punching each other. Yesterday, I saw the president punching 2 guys who overturned the table into the floor. The magicians in this world don't follow the melee fighting route of magic warriors, right? The tavern was usually not too busy in the morning. After Makarov arrived, Rhodes started his first magic class. Generally speaking, if you want to use magic, you need something called magic power. Magic is a special kind of chi that exists not only in our bodies, but also widely in nature. When the chi in our bodies harmonizes with the fluctuations of chi in nature, magic will manifest. To do this, you need a considerable degree of mental strength and concentration. Since Rhodes knew nothing about magic, Makarov had to start from the most basic things. As for more profound theories about emotions, about the soul, about the power of the heart, we have to wait until Rhodes' magic practice reaches a certain level before talking about it, or until he understands it on his own. Is there magic power in my body? Rhodes has always been worried about this. He is not even a person in this world. Fortunately, Makarov gave him reassurance. Of course there is, but it's not easy to detect it yet. It is not easy for ordinary people to discover and strengthen the chi in their bodies. The most common method is meditation. But for you, you can feel the magic through another way first. Rhodes asked, what to do? First, focus on the pendant and try to call it in your heart. Then, try the spell I adapted from the magic of the stars. Makarov taught Rhodes the spell word for word, and Rhodes followed it like a parrot. Just try it if you remember it. Here. Rhodes looked at his companions in the tavern worriedly. Will it cause trouble? Makarov said, don't worry. With your current magic power, you can't summon a creature that is too powerful. Even if you can, you can't maintain it. Rhodes didn't like this answer at all. But since the president said it doesn't matter, let's do it. He held the necklace pendant and stared closely at the gold and blue icon. After a few seconds, he seemed to really feel some connection between himself and it. Rhodes hurriedly chanted the magic spell. I am the person who bridges the road between the two worlds. You, a creature from another world, answer my call and pass through the door. The pendant emitted golden and blue light, and there was magic power gathering in the air. Rhodes squeezed the pendant tightly and shouted the last words. Open the door to another world. Buzz, a thick and atmospheric sound effect sounded, and a whirlpool emitting blue light appeared in front of Rhodes, with little stars shining in the whirlpool. Through this whirlpool, it seems that you can feel the cold air of another world and hear the sound of the cold wind whistling across the cliff. In such a cold and chilling atmosphere, a figure leaped out from the whirlpool. The light and sound of magic attracted the attention of most people in the tavern. This must be a powerful and ruthless creature. Everyone thinks so, and Rhodes thinks so too. However, when the vortex disappeared, there was only a palm-sized, furry white object on the ground. Uluru? The little guy made a strange cry, seeming a little confused. But soon its eyes were fixed on Rhodes, and then it spit out its big pink tongue, ran towards Rhodes with its short legs, and hugged his calf. Rhodes was a little confused. He looked at this little fur ball and thought it looked familiar. He bent down and picked it up to take a closer look. Black eyes, round body. It has white and soft hair like a sheep, a pair of small curved horns on its head, and a long tongue sticking out like a puppy. Rhodes put it on the counter and touched his head. The little guy turned over comfortably, revealing his heart-shaped pink belly. Poro. Rhodes recognized this cute little guy based on his experience in the Howling Abyss. Uluru. The little Poro's voice was full of happiness, as if he had found a meal ticket. Rhodes. The thing summoned by this magic seems to be different from what I thought. Chapter 9, Part 1. Poro? Is that its name? What a cute pronunciation. Mira seemed to like the furry little Poro very much. Rhodes also thinks Poro is cute, but what's the use of just being cute? What he wants is a super powerful hero. Rhodes held Poro in front of his face and looked into his big black eyes. Can this guy fight? Poro's big tongue licked him, and Rhodes subconsciously leaned back, successfully dodging a face wash service. Makarov asked, do you know this creature? Does it have any special abilities? His name is Poro. He lives in a very cold place. His ability. Rhodes thought about it carefully. You can eat, you can grow up if you eat, you can explode if you eat too much, and besides that, you can also be cute. Mira praised. What an interesting ability. It looks like a great contract creature. Rhodes said listlessly. Ah, thank you for the encouragement. So that's it. Is it an ornamental creature? Don't be discouraged. There are also ornamental Protoss among the stars, such as Nikolai in the constellation Canis Minor. Makarov said, it's great to have such a lovely creature by your side, isn't it? Poro seemed to sense Rhodes' disappointment. The pair of small horns standing on his head slowly drooped down, and the tongue that was sticking out also retracted, looking pitifully like an abandoned puppy. Rhodes scratched its chin. Just treat it like a pet. Pulyalu. Poro rubbed Rhodes' palm, making a comfortable sound, and a pair of small horns stood up again. Rhodes pinched the Poro's horns, touched the top of the Poro's head, and rubbed the Poro's heart-shaped belly, gradually falling in love with the soft and fluffy feel. Poro seemed to be enjoying it too, lying on the counter with his tongue tilted to one side. The appearance is like a lamb, but the personality is more like a puppy. Mira picked up a sliced apple and said, "Want to eat it?" Poro turned over and left Rod's massage service and went straight to Myra's feeding. His flexibility was beyond imagination. Does this guy have a setting that recognizes food but not people? Rhodes fell into deep thought. Makarov coughed lightly to attract Rhodes' attention and said to him, regardless of the strength of the poro, when you first opened the door, did you feel a force draining from your body? That is magic power. Rhodes thought for a while. If you put it this way, it seems that there is, generally speaking, after the star spirit wizard opens the door, maintaining the existence of the star spirit also needs to consume magic power, and you must be the same. Makarov said, now meditate as I told you. Feel the slowly draining magic, find its source, and then see your own power clearly. Yes. Rhodes sat down cross-legged on the spot, closed his eyes according to the president's instructions, and concentrated on feeling the power slowly draining from his body. The noise in the tavern gradually disappeared. The sounds of Poro and Mira playing around gradually faded away, and the world became quiet. Rhodes saw himself sitting cross-legged in the darkness, with tiny blue light spots like mist. Outside of own body, there is a winding thin line composed of faint blue light spots, floating to the side of the body. That should be the connection with the Poro. The focus of Rhodes' observation was that within his body, among the mist-like blue magic light spots, there was a conspicuous small vortex, slowly rotating in the center of the body, like a miniature Milky Way. It seems that all the magic power in the body is escaping from there, and at the same time, there are also sparse light spots seeping in from the outside and converging towards the vortex. The magic power is being consumed and restored at the same time. Rhodes easily felt this. He could even feel the speed at which magic power was consumed to maintain Poro's existence, compared with the speed at which magic power was restored. To express it in a common way in online games, MP 1 MP plus 99, the excess consumed will probably be used to replenish the magic power consumed when opening the door. After realizing that Poro's magic power consumption was so low, Rhodes completely gave up hope on its combat effectiveness. Putting the Poro matter aside, Rhodes concentrated on observing himself and tried to direct the light spots in his body. Although a little awkward, he can indeed simply control the flow direction of those light points, which is the magic power. In the real world, as Rhodes' magic power was mobilized, his hair swayed gently, left and right, as if blown by the wind. The tavern today is much quieter than usual because the president is watching. When someone wants to fight and may affect Rhodes, the president will slap him on the head. When Rhodes opened his eyes, Makarov showed a satisfied smile. This kid has great talent. That's it for today's practice on magic. It's time for you to take care of Poro. Makarov reminded, Protoss wizards generally have to sign a contract with the Protoss and maintain a good relationship. As for you, you have to figure it out on your own. Okay. Thank you, President. Rhodes stood up and looked at Mira, only to find that Poro was no longer with her. There. Mira smiled and pointed to the little guy having fun in the tavern. Rhodes followed her finger and realized that his social skills were not as good as those of a dog. He had just meditated for less than an hour, and Poro had already become familiar with many people in the tavern. It stuck out its tongue, constantly shuttled between tables, and rubbed its furry body against other people's calves from time to time. When it is picked up by someone who likes cute things, it will act coquettishly and stare at the food on the table with its big eyes. He just barely had the words, "Please feed," written on his face. The most amazing thing is that after cheating the food, the little guy will immediately run away and go straight to the next target, highlighting the ruthless one. In a very short period of time, everyone in the tavern remembered this cute creature, but only a few remembered its owner's name after being introduced by Mira and Lucky. Rhodes waved. Poro ran over with his short legs, but accidentally fell and rolled to Rhodes' feet like a ball of wool. This guy simply didn't get up. He just lay down and turned over to expose his belly, becoming more and more proficient in his business. Rhodes couldn't help but rub its heart-shaped belly again, and then he carried Poro to the counter. "Can you understand me?" Uluru. Poro tried his best to nod. Rhodes asked, "Do we need to sign a contract or something?" Poro shook his head so hard that he almost fell down. "Then if you go back, will you be the one I summon next time? I remember there are many Poros in the Howling Abyss, right?" The little Poro nodded, then shook his head, with a pleading look on his face. Rhodes guessed, "It will be you, but you don't want to go back?" Poro looked happy. Rhodes looked at the president in embarrassment. Makarov said, "If the magic allows it, and neither party objects, you can stay as long as you want. However, if it will affect your ability to open the next door, just send it back when the time comes." Rhodes nodded. "Since you like it here, then stay here for now." The little Poro spun around in circles with joy. Mira suggested, "Would you like to give it a name?" Rhodes said, "It's called poro. But poro is a general term, right? Just like dogs and cats. I mean, it has its own name." Poro looked at Rhodes expectantly. Chapter 9, Part 2. I have trouble naming. Rhodes looked at Poro and thought for a while. Call him Xiaobai? Dumpling? Furball? Poro's little horns gradually drooped, and it always felt very perfunctory. Rhodes was in trouble. "President Mira, do you have any suggestions? How about calling me Worm?" Chapter 10, Part 1. Worm? Well, warm, because it feels very warm when I hold it, Mira explained. Rod said that Poro lives in a very cold place. I hope it can always feel warm when it is around you. Rhodes thought for a while. It seems pretty good. What do you think? The little Poro's horns stood up. Obviously, he liked it very much. Just like it. Mira smiled. That's how Happy's name came about. Happy is the talking blue kitten who has always been by Natsu's side. Mira introduced him to Rhodes. She said that Happy can fly and can take people to fly with him, but it's a pity that Rhodes hasn't seen Happy fly yet. Then it's decided. From now on, you will be called Worm. It's a legitimate name. That's not how the name is used. The president thought about whether to call Shipiki back to provide after-sale service. Uluru. Worm threw himself into Rhodes' arms and rubbed his head against his chest. Rhodes hugged Worm and felt that its little horns were a little nervous. Sister Mira, I want 2 beers here. Lucky waved towards the counter. Okay, Mira took 2 wooden beer glasses, filled them and put them on the tray. Rod, it's almost noon. We have to get busy. Okay, I'll start working now. Rhodes put down Worm and picked up the tray. Worm looked around and then followed Rhodes, who was going to deliver the wine. The person who asked for the drink was a middle-aged man with a pipe in his mouth, a brown haircut, and was wearing a floral shirt, cropped trousers, and a pullover. Your wine. Hey, why didn't Mira-chan bring it? Wakaba complained casually, but it didn't stop him from picking up the wine glass. Speaking of which, you are the one who has been sitting at the counter these days. Rhodes felt abandoned, but that was normal. He would have preferred a beautiful woman to serve him a meal. My name is Rod. I just joined Fairy Tail and am currently working as a waiter in a tavern. Please take care of me. Oh, newcomer. My name is Wakaba. Wakaba became interested. A hand like smoke came out of the pipe, held another wine glass and brought it to Rhodes. As you can see, smoke magic is used. This glass of wine is yours. Welcome to join Fairy Tail. Bang. Before Rhodes could say anything, the person sitting opposite Wakaba slapped the table and stood up. Whole Wakaba, don't give away my wine to others. This man had short purple hair, a sparse beard around his mouth, and a white windbreaker. Purple flames appeared in his hands as he spoke. The flames knocked away Wakaba's smoke hand and held the wine glass instead. I'll do it if you want. He straightened his collar formally. Hello, I'm B****************** D Macau. Wakaba stood up and smashed his wine glass on the table, put his foot on the stool and leaned forward. Do you want to fight? Huh. Who would be afraid of you? Macao also put his foot on the stool and leaned forward. The two of them put their foreheads together across a table, facing each other tit for tat, refusing to give in to each other. Thick smoke gathered above Wakaba's pipe, and the purple flame also rotated and retracted, floating on Macao's hand. The wine glass originally held by the flames fell. Rhodes hurriedly caught it and spilled a few drops of wine. He wanted to persuade him, but the two of them had already ignored him. They were arguing and rolling up their arms and sleeves, ready to take action at any time. Rhodes looked around as if asking for help, but found that the people nearby looked like they were watching the show. Some people even shouted, "Fight him, teach him a lesson," and so on. Lucky still held the empty wine glass she had just taken back, but now she didn't care to go back, but stood in the crowd watching the fun. She did not forget to remind him. "Rhodes, if I were you, I would stay away now." 4. Whoosh. A wine glass flew past Rhodes' ear. Macao and Wakaba have jumped on the table, grabbed each other's palms, and started wrestling with each other. Rhodes touched his temples, decisively gave up trying to break up the fight, picked up the poravam in one hand and the innocent beer in the other, holding the tray under his arm, and quickly ran back to the counter. The president's small figure gave him a great sense of security. Rhodes asked, "President, don't you need to worry about them? Let them." Makarov picked up the wine glass that Rhodes had just put down and drank a glass of beer. "No one is meditating now, so I don't have to worry about anyone being disturbed. It's nice to make a scene. Not only that, when someone bet on who would fall off the table first, Macau, or Wakaba. The old man even bet 1,000 J. I thought those days were chaotic, just because the president was away. Rhodes looked at the president, who gradually started shouting, "Come on," and said in despair, "Are there no normal people in this guild?" "Don't say that." Mira wiped a wine glass with a smile. "This is very interesting." There was a clanking sound where Macau and Wakaba were. The long table was quickly smashed, and the stools were overturned. The two struggled for a while before they managed to separate. The crowd soon became bored and dispersed. This fight in Fairy Tail can only be regarded as a small fight, because the two uncles were too measured and did not affect anyone else at all. Are they two okay? Rhodes looked at the two people sitting at separate tables angrily and felt that they had their own reasons for breaking up. It doesn't matter. The two of them are like this. They will be sitting together drinking again soon. Mira was not worried about this at all. She said to Makarov, "President, the glass of wine just now will still be charged to your account." That glass of wine was obviously ordered by Macau. "You drank it secretly." "Yes." Makarov failed to escape and was listless. The image of the kind, and reliable president in Rhodes' heart gradually collapsed. This old man doesn't seem to have a straight personality. The reason why the guild is like this must be because the upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked, right? He was about to ask what to do with the broken table when he saw Lucky walking over and making a strange gesture with his hands. The shape of wood, sincere friendship, wooden table. The shattered table top and broken table legs seemed to have gained life, bending, extending, and then fusing together perfectly, reforming into the original long table. A buck-toothed guy next to me complained, "Why do you always use those weird names?" Lucky pushed her long purple hair behind her back and adjusted her glasses with her hands. "Oh, are you jealous of my magic and talent?" "Who could be jealous of something like that?" Lucky was immersed in her own world, holding her face in her hands. "I am really a sinful woman." Rhodes. I had noticed some signs before, and now I am almost sure that Lucky is a very narcissistic person. But her magic is very convenient, and she can almost catch up with Yamato, the wood escaper in the studio next door. Chapter 10, Part 2. No wonder everyone demolishes homes so recklessly. Chapter 11, Part 1. Shaping magic is magic that uses magic power to give shape, or it can be magic that takes away shape. Mira took the time to teach Rod about relevant magic knowledge. Styling magic seems very convenient. Rhodes was a little excited. This is a practical magic that allows you to have a stool to sit on anytime and anywhere and a house to live in. Mira nodded. Yes, in addition to the wood shape used by Lucky, there are also ice shapes, earth shapes, etc., which are magic that can show the personality of the magician. Personality? Rhodes couldn't tell. Is Lucky's personality reflected in her name? By the way, I haven't asked Mira what your magic is. Makarov glanced at the two of them drunkenly and said nothing. Me. Mira looked as usual. I'll show you now. Take a look. Change, only the head is worm. A burst of smoke passed, and Myra's body did not change at all, but her head had turned into the shape of a poro. Rhodes was startled. Porovom was frightened even more, and sat down on the counter, swinging his front legs backwards and dragging his butt on the floor. It's not over yet. The change is only the head of Rhodes. Rhodes watched helplessly as his own face appeared on the opposite side, but from the neck down, Mira was still wearing a red dress. Rhodes covered his eyes. "Sister, you are my biological sister. Please spare me." Mira changed back to her own appearance and asked with a smile, "Ah, am I different?" "It's just because they are so similar that I feel like they are mediocre." Mira corrected. "It's trouble?" "Yes, trouble. So you know." Rhodes felt that there was something sinister in Myra's smile. Bang! Someone slapped a few big bills on the counter. "Mira, I want a barrel of wine." "Kana, did you start drinking so early today?" Kana leaned on the counter and sat on a stool, winking at Mira with her left eye. "I originally planned to go out to work after lunch, but thanks to Tamakeo, I just won money. Congratulations." Mira smiled and gently picked up a wine barrel and put it on the counter, without blushing or out of breath. Rhodes was surprised. He had moved the wine barrel before, and it was so heavy. Mira was so relaxed and so powerful. Is this a wizard? The girl Mira calls Kana is not bad either. She directly opens the cork on the wine barrel, holds the barrel and pours it into her mouth. That is so bold. I really don't know where their slender arms come from so much power. Does magic have such an effect? Rhodes looked at Kana carefully for a few times, and then looked away awkwardly. What this beauty wears is so bold. The lower body is still ordinary cropped pants and leather sandals, and the upper body is only wearing one piece. Rhodes was so short-sighted that he couldn't tell whether it was underwear or a swimsuit. Anyway, after glancing over, his eyes were involuntarily attracted to the waist, groove, and ball, making Rhodes very embarrassed. He has never seen this kind of world in reality. Porawam doesn't have this problem. When he sees someone sitting down, he immediately runs over to beg for food. Do you want a drink too? Kana noticed the little fur ball and asked Mira for a cup to feed Poro wine. Mira wanted to confirm. Rod, can Worm drink? Rhodes thought for a moment and said, I don't know about this either. Why don't you give it a try? You guys, you don't even turn your head when you talk? Kana's voice smelled of alcohol. Rhodes' behavior was somewhat rude. You're the new guy, right? Don't you think you can't stand me the first time you get there? No, I'm sorry. Rhodes had no choice but to turn around with difficulty to face Kana, but he still didn't know where to look, and his eyes were all over the place. Gone with the wind, Who? Kana seemed to understand something and asked with interest, could it be that you are the reserve type? You haven't even had a girlfriend, right? Rhodes felt that he might have met a bad woman and was a little at a loss. Kana didn't even need to hear the answer. She already read the answer from Rhodes' embarrassed face, and she laughed. Ha ha ha, this reaction is so interesting. How about you? Do you want me to take care of you? No need. Rhodes blushed. Did this sister drink too much, or was she just like this? He doesn't know that Kana, who claims to be his sister, is actually only 17 years old now, which is slightly younger than him. But Rhodes was frightened. He didn't know how to deal with this type of girl. Rod, Gray at table 3 over there wants fried pork chops and spaghetti. Fortunately, Mira came to the rescue at the critical moment. Rhodes looked at her gratefully, took the tray, and ran away. It's so disappointing, Mira. Kana complained dissatisfiedly, raised the barrel, and took a few swigs. I'm sorry. I should take a closer look at how Sister Kana cares about Rhodes. Mira smiled. Should we hug first, kiss first, or directly? Enough. Kana squirted out a big mouthful of wine. She looked mature and chic just now, but now she was blushing. Obviously, her experience in some aspects may not be better than Rhodes, and bold clothing is just bold clothing. He is simply a talkative king. Rhodes knew the name Gray and had seen the poster a few times. But for Rhodes, Gray's characteristics were not obvious enough compared to Natsu, and he didn't dare to recognize him before Mira introduced him. However, after meeting Gray face to face, Rhodes immediately remembered this person because naked man. Rhodes felt like he was going blind. What happened to this guy named Gray? The chest and abs look pretty strong. But that's not the point. The point is, why don't you wear clothes in public? Looking at the tops, trousers, and underpants scattered on the ground, this person took them off on purpose after arriving at the guild. Gray was stunned for a moment, then looked down at himself. When? I'm sorry, he didn't even know when he took it off. Rhodes felt like he was about to get a needle's eye. Gray hurriedly put on his clothes, and a buck-toothed man sitting opposite him helped explain. Don't worry, Gray is not a pervert. He just takes off his clothes unconsciously. Rhodes said hesitantly, What? I don't know the common language well, so taking off my clothes anytime and anywhere can't be considered a pervert? The buck-toothed brother glanced at Gray and said uncertainly, Absolutely. Otherwise you should just treat him as a pervert. Who are you calling a pervert? You be ********D. Gray slapped the table and raised his hand. Want to fight? Rhodes felt that he had almost adapted to the communication habits here. He was not lenient with his words and would take action if he was not convinced. So, when I just felt like I couldn't handle it, I should actually take action with Kana? No, the situation is different. It's not good to hit girls either. Mainly because he, a half-baked magician, probably couldn't defeat her. Chapter 11, Part 2. Hey, by the way, where is the top that Gray just put on? Chapter 12, Part 1. Rhodes, who watched another close combat between magicians, luckily returned safely. Kana had already left with a wine barrel, leaving behind a worm sleeping soundly with his belly turned to the sky, and a Makarov with his legs crossed and a snot bubble hanging from his nose. Rhodes turned Worm over but failed to wake it up, and waved his hand in front of Makarov's eyes, but there was no response. Why are you so asleep? Mira covered her mouth and smiled. Both of them were drunk by Kana. Rhodes glanced at the woman who was holding a wine barrel and tasting wine with Macau. So cruel. Haha, actually Kana. Mira wanted to reveal a little bit about Kana's nature to Rhodes to avoid bad misunderstandings, but she felt that would not be fun, so she immediately changed her words. She's a very nice person. Probably. Rhodes tried his best to believe Myra's words. By the way, is there any magic in this world that can take off clothes instantly? Yes, dress-up magic. Mira said, many girls know basic dress-up magic. It is very convenient to change clothes when going out. But if you want to say that the person who is best at changing magic is the one who can even change magic armor and weapons in an instant during battle, it must be Gray, right? Rhodes answered. He remembered that Gray was a member of the protagonist group, so he had to have some special skills. I just witnessed Gray's top disappearing spell with my own eyes. The person who is good at dressing up magic and can even use it to fight must be Gray. Rhodes felt that his analysis was reasonable and well-founded. But Mira denied. No, it's Erza. Gray is the ice-shape mage. Taking off clothes is just a bad habit. It seems that he developed it when he was learning magic. It's modeling magic again. Ice modeling, making ice sculptures for fun? Erza uses the magic of changing clothes. Speaking of which, Erza is almost coming back. Mira continued. By the way, Erza is the strongest female mage in the guild, and she is also very beautiful, so look forward to it. Also, if you want to try to pursue her, I have information here. Myra's words suddenly became more. The last person in the guild who pursued Erza was Loki, but he was beaten half to death. Maybe Rhodes is just the type she likes. Spare me. Rhodes showed a helpless expression. Miss Mira, your bad taste seems to be becoming more and more undisguised. Moreover, do you also have the attribute of liking gossip? The job of a waiter is calm, noisy, and occasionally exciting. If you don't respond in time, you may be affected by other people's fights. But as long as you stay away in time, there will always be fun to watch. Of course, when watching the excitement, you have to avoid the wine bottles, tables, and chairs that may fly towards you at any time. At noon, Rhodes unlocked a small perk of being a waiter, free lunch. Today's main dish is Fairy Tale's special cassoulet. This was the first time Rhodes had heard the name of this dish, and he wasn't sure what it tasted like. But the moment the lid was opened, his nasal cavity and salivary glands had already made a judgment. It smells so good. It was so fragrant that Poravam, who was drunk by Kana, opened his eyes and followed the smell to ask for food. Various ingredients such as chicken legs, pork, sausages, and white beans are regularly arranged in the thick soup, and there is a layer of crispy skin on the surface that looks crispy and fragrant. When Lucky and Mira sat down and signaled for the meal to begin, Rhodes couldn't wait to take a sip of the soup. When the delicious and viscous soup entered his mouth, Rhodes couldn't help but exclaimed, This would be absolutely amazing if used with rice. Wow, the skin of this chicken leg is crispy and sweet, and the inside is soft and tender. It will be more delicious when eaten with some soup. Wow, this pork tastes great too. How come even the beans taste so delicious? Rhodes transformed into a wow monster. He had a lot to say about each ingredient, but he felt that talking would affect the efficiency of cooking. After much hesitation, I decided to have a good meal first before talking. 20 minutes later, both Rhodes and Worm had their bellies rounded, and both let out a sigh of contentment. Rhodes pointed to the empty casserole. Is this really a staff meal? It seems like this kind of dish is very troublesome to make, right? Mira thought for a while and said, It's not very complicated. Just use white beans, onions, carrots, tomatoes, thyme, pork rinds, etc. to make a pot of thick soup. During this period, fry the chicken legs, pork, and sausages. Then put the various ingredients into the casserole layer by layer and arrange them. Pour over the thick soup and bake for a while before serving. Isn't this very complicated? Rhodes put Worm on his lap and moved him. He always felt that the current scene had a sense of déjà vu when Wang Shifeng introduced Chechen to Grandma Lu. Well, Grandma Lu, let's just say Grandma Lu. Rhodes thought about the delicious food just now and said in a hopeless voice, Mira, I want to be a waiter here forever. Lucky smiled and said, It seems that Rod is very satisfied with the contents of his stomach bag this time. Fill the stomach bag? Contents? Rhodes thought for a second. Is this how you express feeling full after eating? Mira saw his confusion and quickly waved her hand and said, No, please don't learn from Lucky in terms of common language. Sister Mira, Lucky said angrily, what you said is too much. My way of expression is obviously very poetic. Yes, Mira accommodated herself. But Rod's language skills are not yet at the stage of learning your kind of poetry, so let him go. Really? Lucky pouted and started to put away the dishes. In the afternoon, it was Rhodes' rest time, and Rhodes planned to follow the president's advice and go to the library to study. Rhodes had been pushed by Elfman to visit the guild's library before. The light inside is a bit dim. There are rows of bookshelves in the room that are taller than a person. There are movable steps next to the bookshelves for people to take out books. The library in the afternoon was as quiet as usual, and the air was filled with the unique smell of books. Uluru? Worm didn't seem to like this place very much. Shoo. Rhodes made a quiet gesture to Worm, then picked it up and put it on his shoulders, unconsciously walking lightly. Following the signs hanging on the bookshelf, Rhodes found the magic area, and then looked for related books one by one through the titles. Unfortunately, there is no book titled Celestial Magic. The president said that there is relevant information in the library. Rhodes thought for a while. It should be included in a certain category with other magics, right? He went back and found an encyclopedia of magic. Opening the catalog, it is clearly divided into two categories, ability system and possession system. To put it simply, it is a person who uses magic on his own, somewhat like a superpower. The other is to rely on magic props to a certain extent, which means relying a bit on technology. According to the president, Rhodes's magic belongs to the holding system and is very similar to the celestial spirit magic. So all you need to do is find the celestial spirit magic in the directory of the holding system. Chapter 12, Part 2. But before that, Rhodes went through the standard process of reading a book. First he opened a page and took a look at what was written. Chapter 13, Part 1. Receiving Magic. Magic that can absorb the body of an animal for its own use and enhance its own power. The risk of this magic is that if you forcibly accept an overly powerful monster and you don't have enough strength or willpower, you may lose your mind or even go berserk until you die of exhaustion. The basic practice methods are as follows. Snap. Rhodes closed the book and looked at the cover carefully. It was the Encyclopedia of Magic. Just open an encyclopedia, and the methods of practicing magic are clearly written in it. Is this content I can watch without paying? Boom. Worm fell off Rhodes' shoulder and hit the book cover. He turned over in a daze, somewhat confused about the situation. I see, you really don't like studying. Rhodes put Worm back on his shoulders, and then left the library holding the large encyclopedia. Just in case, he had to confirm whether he could read the book. Encyclopedia of Magic? Of course, no problem, Mira said. There are no books in the library that are not allowed to be read, but there are even methods for learning various magics. Won't there be any problems? But the purpose of putting this kind of books in the library is for people to learn. Mira probably guessed what Rhodes was worried about. Don't worry, some dangerous magic will not be placed there casually. Rhodes nodded. Oh, then I will be unscrupulous. That's not the way to be unscrupulous. Rhodes waved his hand and returned to the library, reading quietly. Star spirit magic is divided into possession magic according to the way of use, and space magic according to the type of action. At the same time, it is an ancient magic that has been passed down for more than 400 years. Each star spirit corresponds to a constellation in the sky and has its own medium, which is a key. Ordinary star spirits correspond to silver keys, while the 12 most powerful star spirits correspond to 12 gold keys. Because Rhodes was reading a magic encyclopedia rather than a specialized book on star spirit magic, the above introduction is relatively superficial. The learning method actually records the method of opening the door after holding the key and the process of signing a contract with the Protoss. But Rhodes had already learned the important part from the president. More detailed content requires Rhodes to look for specialized information, such as books on ancient magic and space magic. He looked around at the sea of books. This was really no small project. Rod spent hours in the library. Worm fell asleep and woke up on the desk, woke up and fell asleep again, and finally woke up from hunger and made a slight, snoring sound to remind Rhodes that it was almost time to eat. Rhodes stood up and stretched and looked at the time. It's almost 5 o'clock. I have worked harder than when I studied at school. If I keep working hard like this, I will become a magic master sooner or later. Uluru, Worm's little horn drooped, as if urging him to finish bragging and leave quickly. It was impossible to go fast. Rhodes had to put the book in his hand back to its original place, and then went to the bathroom to wash his hands again before returning to the tavern to work. As a waiter, I usually start the meal earlier or later so as not to be too busy when it's time for the meal. Rhodes and Mira also chose to go in advance. During this period, when guests came to the tavern to order food, someone had to immediately put down their jobs and go over to receive them, which was quite troublesome. Sister Mira, we are back. A girl with blue hair walked in together with two tall and thin boys. Levy, welcome back. Jet and Troy too. Some people chatting in the tavern welcomed the three of them immediately. It seemed that they were quite popular. Mira immediately put down her bowls and chopsticks and greeted him. Welcome. It's 2 days later than expected. Is the mission going well? Yeah, Levy said excitedly. The client is a good person and invited us to spend 2 more days at the Shiloh store. Hey, Mira deliberately showed a difficult expression. If you increase the reward without authorization, it will be illegal. I'm not increasing the remuneration without authorization. Levy hugged Myra's arm and used a slightly coquettish tone. The client said it was just in case something unexpected happened in the future. It was just used as after-sale service or something. Her height is only a little higher than Myra's shoulders, and she is a quite petite and cute girl. Snuggled up next to Mira like this, it looks even more cute. At least Jet and Troy both have envious expressions on their faces, envious of Mira. Then, let's just say you pass. Mira closed one eye. It seemed that they had a good relationship. Thank you, Sister Mira. Levy let go of Mira, handed the task list back to her for registration, and asked, have there been any changes in the guild? It's basically the same as before, but a new person came here recently, and I wanted to ask you for help because of the language problem a few days ago. Levy stood on tiptoes, put his hands on the counter, and asked, what? What's going on? The magic she uses is 3-dimensional writing, which can use magic to write words and give them real meaning. For example, if you write a word that represents fire, the words will actually turn into flames and be emitted. Perhaps it is because of this magic that Levy understands many ancient characters and is full of interest in everything related to language and characters. That's it. Mira briefly talked about Rhodes while helping Levy register the mission. I'll introduce him to you later. Now Rhodes should also need your help. Jet and Troy, standing behind Levy like two generals, instantly noticed the key word. He? Rhodes had already finished his meal at a fast pace and was ready to come over to take over. It happened that Mira introduced him. This is Rod. This is Levy, Jeter, and Troy. In fact, Rod had already been introduced by Lucky once, but before he could say hello, Jet had already jumped onto the nearest table. Levy also jumped on the stool next to the table, while Troy stepped on the stool and the table. The three of them each posed handsomely and said loudly, "We are Lane Engine Team." Two buddies who were drinking nearby were startled by the three of them. Rhodes was also embarrassed by these three. Seeing the performance of these three, he could only think of the Rockets. Rhodes raised his hand, not knowing whether to applaud or scratch his goosebumps. He covered his mouth with one hand and leaned into Myra's ear. They are not the type who are very independent and can cause trouble, right? Mira thought for a while. How should I put it? Compared to Natsu, they cause very little trouble. Rhodes already knew that Natsu was a troublemaker, and most of the reward from each job was used to compensate for the damaged things. If he caused less trouble than Natsu, Rhodes sighed, which is a very disturbing description. Chapter 13, Part 2. Could such a petite and cute girl like Levy be a troublemaker? Chapter 14, Part 1. Then it's settled. I'll help you find the necessary information, and I can also help explain it. You tell me about Chinese. According to Mira, Levy likes books very much, and she is probably the person most familiar with the guild library. And in addition to magic, Rhodes also needs to understand the history, geography, culture, and other aspects of this place. You can also ask Levy about these things. Even if she doesn't remember them all, she will know where to look. With the help of Levy, Rhodes' learning efficiency can be improved a lot, and she was interested in Rhodes' mother tongue, so both parties could get what they needed. The only ones who were unhappy were Jet and Troy, but because Rhodes didn't show any special behavior after seeing Levy, he didn't say anything rude. But, then again, Levy is so cute, but he doesn't react at all? This is another kind of unhappiness. Rhodes didn't understand the chaotic expression changes of these two people at first, but later he heard some gossip from Mira. The three of them grew up together, and Jet and Troy were recently investigating the ways girls like to express their feelings. Rhodes suddenly realized, it turns out it's tea. No, it's not polite to call your companion that way. He should be called the flower protector. However, Rhodes looked at those two people as if they were scum. Levy probably looks like a junior high school girl, right? Is this a crime for them? Mira covered her mouth and laughed. Levy is already 16 years old. She knows that you will be sad if you say this. Rhodes was silent for a moment. He remembered that Mira was 18 years old, and the 2-year gap seemed understandable. That's not right, Rhodes said. A 16-year-old is still a minor. No, In the kingdom of Fiori, you can drink and do various things at the age of 15. Mira pointed at Kana, who was half drunk and half awake holding a wine bucket. For example, Kana has been drinking since she was 13 years old. Oh. Rhodes felt that the example Mira gave was full of flaws. But it seems quite normal for people in this guild to not follow the rules. The agreement with Levi was, of course, to start tomorrow. She just came back today and needed a rest after a long journey. Jet and Troy were particularly energetic. They chatted about their journey experience with familiar people in the guild without returning home. Rhodes was a little envious. He had to learn magic quickly, and then he could see this magical world with his own eyes. Of course, the key point is that you can make money and pay off debt faster. He is a person who doesn't even dare to spend money, and now he always feels uncomfortable carrying a large amount of debt. During the dinner in the tavern, it was busy and noisy. Just like yesterday, Rod helped wipe the tables and chairs and swept the floor with Worm back to his rented house. The room was still as dark as yesterday and seemed a little deserted, but Worm sniffed around like a puppy, adding a little more life to the empty house. Rhodes allowed Worm to explore at will, sitting cross-legged on the bed and meditating as he did during the day, trying to exercise his mental power and increase the magic power in his body. It wasn't until sleepiness and exhaustion came over him that he washed up hastily, put out the oil lamp, and fell asleep. Before going to bed, I still thought that the oil lamp was inconvenient, and I would buy a magic lamp sooner or later. Worm was like a little fur ball, lying quietly on Rhodes' pillow until the early morning, when his body gradually became transparent and disappeared. That night, Rhodes always felt warm and comfortable in his sleep. Early the next morning, Rhodes got up on time to wash up. When he made the bed and was about to go out, he felt like something was missing. "Where's my poro?" Rhodes bent down and looked under the bed. "Worm?" After searching around the room, Rhodes remembered that Worm's location could be determined through magic contact. He closed his eyes and found that his magic power was much stronger than yesterday, and it seemed that it was not consumed now. Is the time limit up, or will it automatically return when I fall asleep? Rhodes was not sure about the situation and decided to summon again. I am the one who connects the two worlds. You, a creature from another world, answer my call and pass through the door. The pendant emitted golden and blue light, and there was magic power gathering in the air. Rhodes squeezed the pendant tightly and shouted the last words. Open the door to another world. A small stream of magic power was drawn out of Rhodes' body, and a small white figure appeared on the floor. Worm was confused for a moment, then immediately threw himself into Rhodes' arms and arched again and again. Your jumping ability is really good. Rhodes caught Worm and rubbed it, then asked, "Were there any other companions beside you just now?" Worm shook his head. It had been sleeping in its nest. "Just now I felt that besides you, I could summon another. I don't know what it was." Worm looked at Rhodes with his dark eyes, revealing clear foolishness, clear innocence. "It seems you don't know anymore." Rhodes touched Worm's head, put it down, and then picked up the pendant again. "I'll find out if I try again." "I am." Just as the pendant started to glow, Rhodes interrupted the magic. "Forget it. I don't feel safe trying it at home, so I'd better ask the president." He picked up Worm, locked the door, went downstairs and left. Goodman came earlier today and had already arranged the stall. "Good morning, Mr. Rhodes." He noticed Worm sticking out his big tongue. "Is this your pet?" Rod realized an important question. Do landlords hate tenants keeping pets? Fortunately, Worm is not just a pet. It's called Worm, and I summoned it from another world using magic. Rhodes said, "Worm, say hello." Uluru, Worm made a cute sound. Magic. No wonder I have never seen such an animal. Goodman was a little envious. "Why don't I wait until my son grows up and let him learn magic?" "You have a son. That's great. You can also join Fairy Tale when the time comes." "Ha ha ha. Yes, but he is only 3 years old. It's still early for this kind of thing." "It's still early." For some reason, Rhodes felt that Goodman's smile was a little dry. Because he still doesn't quite understand the two-level reputation of his guild. He is both the most trustworthy guild and the guild that needs to be wary of the most. Fairy Tale is now one of the most famous guilds in the country, and being able to join there is something to be proud of as a magician. Moreover, the citizens often have contact with the magicians and know that they are generally good people. Causing trouble and destroying things are secondary, because they will try their best to make up for and compensate for anything they cause. The problem that worries Goodman most is that there are many weirdos and problem children there. If you want to send your children in, will they develop any quirks? Will they tear down your home at every turn? Normally, Watching them fight, destroy guilds, etc. is very interesting and lively, but if your child becomes lively... Chapter 14, Part 2. Goodman needs to think about it. Chapter 15, Part 1. It was less than a kilometer away from the guild, and a leisurely walk would take less than 20 minutes. It's just that the tempting smells wafting from various breakfast stalls and shops on the road somewhat affected Rhodes' progress. Worm was even more troubled than him, with his big tongue hanging out and his eyes not knowing where to look. The food types here are as diverse as the clothing styles, including Chinese, European, and Japanese styles. Rhodes picked a bun shop that he liked and bought 2 buns, one for him and one for Wumu. Rhodes only ate half and gave the remaining half to Worm. He felt that he should not waste it until he had enough money in the future. It would be better to go to the guild to eat a bowl of noodles instead of buying this. Worm actually ate very happily. Maybe it was because the resources in the Howling Abyss were scarce, but the child was not picky about food at all. Good morning, Mira. Good morning, Rod and Worm. Lucky came a little late today and apologized breathlessly as soon as she arrived. Sorry, I sorted out the collection this morning and forgot about the time, Mira said. It doesn't matter. There isn't much to do in the morning, and now I have Rod to help. Collectibles? Rhodes was quite curious about what Lucky would collect. Wood carvings? After all, she used wood modeling magic. Lucky's collection is very interesting, Mira smiled. Rod must visit it if you have the chance. Rhodes already knew a little about Myra's dark side. Looking at Myra's smile, he felt that this matter was not that simple. Unfortunately, boys are strictly prohibited from entering the girls' dormitory. However, I can bring 1 or 2 smaller items to show you when I have time. Lucky adjusted her glasses, and the white light reflected on the lenses made Rhodes feel that something was wrong. Let me ask, isn't it something scary? No way. They are all very cute collections. Rhodes became more and more suspicious, while Mira refused to say anything and just smiled, as if expecting Rhodes to see a surprise expression. Anyway, he would find out sooner or later. Rhodes put aside his curiosity and decided to eat a bowl of noodles first. After he had eaten and drank enough, the guild gradually became lively. The guild leader also appeared wearing regular clothes and holding a wooden stick. As usual, he sat cross-legged on the counter and watched the children laughing. If someone didn't understand the situation, seeing him like this, they would probably think that he was just an ordinary kind old man. President, there is something you want to know about my magic. After Rhodes finished the chores he was responsible for, he immediately went to Makarov to explain his situation. That's it. Let's try it now. Let's go to the back of the guild. Makarov was actually a little touched that this child would ask for his opinion before doing something that might be dangerous. The level of stability has exceeded more than 90% of Fairy Tail members. Also, the usage of telling everything you know is wrong. Oh. Rhodes went to say hello to Mira, leaving Worm to play in the tavern, while he and the president walked towards the back door. Behind the guild is a large courtyard with a blue stone wall and an iron gate with a Fairy Tail logo in the middle. Rhodes looked out through the gap in the door. Outside was an endless stretch of water. The morning sun shed orange-red light on the water and was broken by the breeze. All he could see was ripples of light. As a person who is not very self-disciplined, Rhodes has not seen the rising sun for a long time since he went to college. So there is a sea behind the guild? No, it's a lake, but it's just very large. Makarov knew that Rhodes' common sense was still somewhat lacking, so he introduced, by the way, Magnolia is an inland city. If you want to see the sea, you have to take a train to Harujin. It is a port city and the scenery is very good. Then I must go and see it in the future. Rhodes set another small goal. It's a good thing to have somewhere you want to go. What Makarov is most worried about is that Rhodes will lose his way forward. In the current situation, as long as he has something he wants to do, whether he wants to learn magic or travel, it's all good thing. Okay, let's get started. Okay. Rhodes took out the pendant from his collar and recited the magic spell again. This time the whirlpool appeared from the ground, and what was felt through the whirlpool was no longer cold wind, but moist water vapor, and the shadows of water plants could be vaguely seen. The vortex disappeared, and Rhodes felt that the magic power in his body poured out like a flood, and most of it was gone in an instant. Ripples like water surface rippled on the ground, and a green, shelled creature nearly 1 meter tall and about 2 meters long emerged from the middle of the water waves. It has 6 legs, a pair of short pincers, a pair of green eyes, and a pair of tentacles like twin ponytails on its head. It feels wider, lower, and shorter than an ordinary minivan. This is a crab? Makarov looked up slightly at this creature that was taller than him. Right. When it appeared, Rhodes already knew the name of this big guy. It's called Canyon Swift Crab. It comes from the river channel of Summoner's Canyon. If it has characteristics, run soon. Canyon Swift Crab, commonly known as river crab, river crab, etc. Like Poro, it is a creature in the game League of Legends, but it is not on the same map. To be precise, it comes from the Serpentine River, or the Serpentine River, but Rhodes, like most players, does not know the name of that river. Unlike the Poro, which is a mascot-like thing, the Canyon Swift Crab is a neutral creature, commonly known as a wild monster. Killing it can earn money and experience points. In the game, the river crab should be the weakest wild monster, because it, will, attack. It is said that in the ancient version, the river crab once had attack power, but when Rhodes played, he was just a wild monster who only knew how to run away after being beaten. This thing should be regarded as one of Tatsuya's favorite wild monsters. Almost every time before or after going online to support Rhodes, Tatsuya would brush up a river crab to add to the fun. You don't have to take the heads, but you have to brush the river crabs. Rhodes was not too disappointed with the fact that his second summoned object still might not have much attack power. Because what is even more disappointing is that his summoning route may be different from what he imagined. I thought I could get help from all kinds of beautiful and powerful heroes, but now it seems I can only get help from wild monsters. Rhodes held the necklace given to him by Tatsuya with mixed emotions. Should it be said that it was indeed a necklace given by the arrogant jungler? If this continues, we can change our name to Ivern instead of Rhodes. Criticisms come to mind. This magic should still be practiced. Although it was in a different direction than what I expected, it was still very powerful to be able to summon wild monsters. One day, if you can summon a small dragon or a big dragon, won't you be invincible? Putting aside those considerations, the size of the swift crab in front of him was beyond Rhodes' understanding. But if you think about the size comparison between the hero and the crab in the game, it seems that they are indeed that big. Chapter 15, Part 2. Although this guy is not aggressive in the game, in reality, with his size alone, he would probably be fatal if he hit someone, right? Rhodes felt the real magical connection between himself and the swift crab, and with the president beside him, he had the courage to approach it. As if it understood Rhodes' thoughts, the swift crab meekly leaned down and let Rhodes' hand be placed between its two tentacles, which should be regarded as a head-touching action. It feels cool to the touch and seems a bit damp, but fortunately there is no fishy smell. Do you have any special abilities that I don't know about? Rhodes felt that the game settings might change after being reflected in this magical world, so he asked. In fact, he also asked Poseidon the same thing. Then Worm showed him very awesome skills such as hugging his thighs, jumping into his arms, and eating. Now Rhodes only hopes that this Canyon Swift Crab can bring him a little surprise. Chapter 16, Part 1. Just after asking that question, Rhodes saw himself. Not looking with your own eyes, nor the feeling of looking in a mirror, but looking up from a bottom-up perspective. His hand was resting on his head, and his arm blocked his view a little, but because the distance between his eyes was wide enough, he could still see his face. This is the Swift Crab's perspective? It felt strange to have two pictures suddenly appear in his mind. Rhodes retracted his hand, and could immediately see his hand retracting action clearly from two angles. When the Swift Crab gets up, the perspective will also change subtly. Rhodes directed the Swift Crab to turn around, and he was back-to-back with it, instantly gaining a 300-degree field of vision. Makarov nodded after listening to Rhodes' description. So it is a reconnaissance summoned beast, and it should have a wide range of uses. Immediately afterwards, the Swift Crab showed off its maneuverability. After letting Rhodes sit on its back, the Swift Crab crashed through the guild wall, ran to the lake, and performed a unique trick of floating on the water. It waved its 6 legs and moved on the lake as if it were on the ground. Rhodes' hands tightly grasped the 2 rain-like tentacles of the Swift Crab, feeling the strong wind coming from the pavement and the occasional splash of water on his body. He didn't know how fast this speed was, but it was more exciting than the speedboat ride he took in Eastlake, maybe because he didn't wear a life jacket. It is faster than ordinary horses and dolphin horses. It is also good that it can move on water. Its destructive power is average, but Makarov gave a rational evaluation. Looking at the damaged courtyard wall, he shouted at Rhodes' back, "Even so, don't destroy the guild casually." "I'm sorry, it's my first time to ride a river crab. I don't understand its behavior." "I didn't mean it." Rod eliminated Levy. "We originally agreed to go to the library to study together, but now we can only painstakingly build the wall under the supervision of the president. It doesn't matter if he doesn't know it. The president teaches on site, and he knows a little bit about carpentry and masonry, mainly because the president has destroyed the guild no less often than others, and he has become a good doctor after a long illness. It's okay. I just accidentally damaged a little of the wall. Levy expressed great tolerance for this, perhaps because he was used to similar unexpected events. It just so happens that I have found a suitable common sense book. Let's find some suitable content and read it to you now. That's great. Thank you, Levy. Rod was very happy. He used to like to use his mobile phone to play songs and crosstalk while doing things like cleaning, but now he is bored. This girl is really considerate. No wonder Jet and Troy like her so much. First of all, there is this country, called the Kingdom of Fiori, with a population of about 17 million. It is located on the peninsula to the west of the mainland. It was recognized as a neutral country about 160 years ago. Levy's voice of reading and explaining which sounded a little pleasant. Rhodes kept building walls. When he heard Fiori population of 17 million, he felt that this country might not be too big. It's good to be a neutral country. You don't have to worry too much about war, probably. The city of Magnolia, where we are located, is in the eastern part of the Kingdom of Fiori, not far from the border with neighboring Bosco. The population is about 60,000. In this regard, Rhodes heard Mira once say that magic has been popular in Magnolia since long ago, and it is considered a very prosperous city in the Kingdom of Fiori. Then the next step is the key point. Lei Yuanyi emphasized, magic used to be something that was feared by people, so magicians were often persecuted in the past. In addition, there were often fights between magicians, making the whole world unstable. In order to change all this, 150 years ago, the world's first magicians' guild, the Dragon of the Magic Circle, was established. The magicians began to unite, use magic to protect themselves and their companions, and also worked hard to communicate with ordinary people, and even solve their troubles for ordinary people and earned rewards. Since then, magician guilds have appeared one after another, and magic has gradually become a part of people's lives. This has slowly evolved into a situation where magicians and ordinary people live in harmony. Then 97 years ago, in the year X686, our guild Fairy Tale was established. Do fairies have tails? After all, do fairies themselves really exist? All this is unknown. That represents eternal mystery and eternal adventure. This is the meaning given to Fairy Tale by Mavis, the first president. Levy's eyes sparkled when she said the latter part, and it was obvious that she really liked this guild. This is the first time Rhodes has heard the meaning of the name Fairy Tale, and he feels a little romantic. It was so romantic that he didn't even remember a few sentences of the history of Fiori that Levy told. But it's not without gain. At least Rhodes learned that this is a country with a bit of a feudal monarchy. There are kings, ministers, knights, and armies here. Naturally, some people in the royal family and those who serve the royal power also study magic. Mages are more respected in many places, but they are still citizens of this country. They are still subject to the jurisdiction of the royal family and do not enjoy the same privileges as nobles with titles. At the same time, in order to maintain the stability of the magic world, there is also an organization called the Magic Council, which is responsible for monitoring the behavior of magicians, sanctioning the Dark Guild, etc. But when Levy mentioned the Senate, his expression became very strange, as if he didn't like this institution, and was even a little afraid of it. In this way, Rhodes doesn't understand. What are you afraid of when it comes to sanctioning the Dark Guild? Isn't our Fairy Tale a regular guild? Broken. Rhodes realized that he had forgotten to ask about this. Fairy Tale is a regular guild, right? It's a pleasure to spend time with Levy. Whether she is explaining history and geography or explaining the basics of magic, the little girl is very thorough. Rhodes, a person with almost zero basic knowledge, didn't find it difficult to understand. Moreover, during the explanation process, he often told many relevant stories with eloquent references, which made Rhodes marvel that Levy's knowledge was even broader than that of his senior year in high school. When Rhodes had almost repaired the damaged courtyard wall, Levy also said he was tired and looked at him helplessly. Oh yes, Chinese. Rhodes understood the look in her eyes. Shall I wash my face first? In fact, he wanted to take a shower and change clothes, but he was very uncomfortable after working for a long time. If you want to wash your face, I'll help you. Three-dimensional text water. Levy waved his arm and wrote the word water in the air with his fingers. The words that glowed with magic when she wrote them really turned into letters composed of clear water after she finished writing. And with Levy's control, it floated in front of Rhodes. Use this. Rhodes looked at the word water in front of him, which was composed of water, and tentatively put his hand in. Chapter 16, Part 2. You can actually wash your hands like in a basin, and you can even splash a handful on your face to wash your face. What a convenient magic. It's just, what the hell, yes, it does what you say. Hee hee. It's not that exaggerated. Levi was a little embarrassed after being praised. After Rhodes washed his face, he controlled the water characters to fly into the lake like ordinary water flow. And I don't use it well. I can only provide a little assistance when my companions are fighting. I think this magic will definitely come in handy. Rhodes feels that the three-dimensional text is very similar to the scene in some novels where you use a pen to write and fight, so the potential should be great. Then let me teach you the pronunciation of Chinese characters first. Rhodes took the light pen Levi had just used and wrote the initials and finals of Chinese pinyin in the air. After thinking about it, I marked it with the basic syllables of the languages of this world, and then taught her to read them one by one. Levi read and memorized it enthusiastically, and didn't stop until Lucky came to call Rod to work. Chapter 17, Part 1. At noon today, the tavern was noisier than yesterday. The main reason is that Natsu has returned from a mission, but Gray hasn't left yet. The two people were 10 meters apart, but suddenly they looked into each other's eyes and started arguing for no apparent reason. Natsu yelled things like droopy eyes and ice cubey asterisk 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 D. Gray also shouted words like hanging eye and flaming fool. After no more than 10 seconds at most, the two people's foreheads touched each other, and then they fought together. These two guys didn't fight as measuredly as Makao and Wakaba, and soon a stool leg flew out and hit Elfman on the back. Elfman yelled man and other words, waving his fists and joining the battle group, but was soon punched away by Natsu and Gray each. Elfman flew away and knocked over Kana's wine table. The wine bottle thrown by Kana hit a handsome guy on the head. The handsome guy who was chatting with two beauties did not show any anger, but let go of the two beauties in a graceful manner. Please wait a moment, I'll get involved. He also winked at him before leaving. Two beauties were shocked by his eyes and screamed to cheer him on. The tavern became increasingly chaotic, and one member after another was involved in the battle, including Lita's who was painting, Nabo who was looking at the work queue, and Levi's team. Mira, as before, was smiling at the counter and watching the excitement. Lucky is already fighting, and this girl is not an economical person. Rhodes decisively placed the food he was about to deliver on the counter and left it next to the drunk president. Feel safe. He was concentrating on the various battlefields in the tavern, not to watch the excitement, but to avoid the unidentified flying props that might fly at any time. Rhodes is already an old employee who has joined Fairy Tail for 2 days. When working in the guild, you must learn to protect yourself. Seeing that the scene was getting more and more intense, and the hand-to-hand combat was about to escalate into a magic battle, Rhodes felt that it was time to wake up the president to stop them. This step seems to be a routine. But before he could take action, the guild's door opened with a bang, and the bright sunlight at noon shone through the door, outlining a graceful figure. When Rhodes' eyes gradually adapted to the sunlight, the figure had already walked in steadily. She has long crimson hair, no emotion or anger on her delicate face, and her black boots and blue skirt perfectly modify her beautiful legs. But what happened to be that he was wearing a piece of metal armor on his upper body, complete with raglans, arm armor, and gauntlets. If you put armor plates on the skirt and put a sword in her hand, she will look like a female knight. But what she was holding at the moment was a 3-meter-long rope. When she walked in the door, she could see that the rope was pulling a flatbed truck. The car contained a mountain of suitcases that were taller than her. He must be a tough guy. Rhodes made this judgment in his mind. Then Rhodes noticed her crimson hair and remembered what Mira mentioned just yesterday, Erza. As Erza walked through the door with her luggage, the noisy guild fell silent. The people who were noisy just now were frozen as if the pause button had been pressed, even though some people were still grabbing others by their collars or hair. Mira smiled happily. Welcome back, Erza. I'm back. Erza responded politely, then looked at the others, her expression immediately becoming serious. Everyone was silent, and only a few brave ones tried to talk. Miss Erza, is the mission going well? He even added a special honorific. Don't try to get away with it. I heard that you have caused a lot of trouble again. Those things aside, Pajita, don't dance on the table. Nabu, don't just wave it in front of the bulletin board. Take on a commission. Wakaba, watch your cigarette ashes. Kana. Erza came up and criticized a group of problem children and uncles by name. Those who broke tables and chairs were severely reprimanded. No one she named dared to talk back. Especially Natsu and Gray, the two guys who had just fought the hardest were now arm in arm, looking like they had a good relationship. Erza nodded with satisfaction. It's good to live in harmony, but Gray, your clothes, when? Gray hurriedly found his pants and put them on. However, Erza has not stopped typing. President, they are drunk in broad daylight, so they should be restrained to some extent, right? What does it matter? Makarov didn't seem to be very sober and was even burping from wine. Rhodes suddenly found that the tavern had returned to its normal state, and the people who had been fighting just now were drinking and chatting normally. Natsu and Gray sat opposite each other, still unconvinced when their eyes met. But once Erza's eyes glanced over, they immediately clinked glasses and laughed in tacit understanding. This is simply the teaching director. At this time, Erza's eyes fell on Rhodes, and fortunately he was still kind. Where is the new member? Is he a new member, or is he a resident of Magnolia? Rhodes greeted him politely. Hello, I'm Rhodes. I just joined the guild 2 days ago. I heard Mira mention your bad deeds before. It was like thunder. B-Ban's evil deeds. Erza seemed to have been hit by something and looked at Mira in shock. She only knew that Mira liked gossip, but she didn't know that Mira would speak ill of people behind their backs. That's not it. There is something wrong with Rhodes' common language. Mira had a headache, and finally a misunderstanding occurred. She explained how Rod learned the language, adding, in short, while Rhodes is learning magic and common language, he is temporarily working part-time as a waiter in a tavern. I see. I'm Erza. Erza's attitude towards the new members is quite friendly. Since you have joined the guild, you are like family. If you have any difficulties, you can come to me and I will try my best to help you. When Erza said the word full force, she clenched her fists and her tone and expression were very serious. Thank you. Rhodes didn't know whether he should be happy or not. Good news, we have become family with Erza from the protagonist group. Bad news, Erza just took care of a large group of family members, and judging from how skillfully she looked, it was definitely not the first time. Erza sat in the guild for a while, drank something, and then left with the luggage trolley, saying that she had been out for too long and needed to go back to clean the room and sort out the loot. Rhodes curiously asked Mira what Erza's mission was, but Mira said that the client requested to keep the specific situation confidential. Basically, he was helping a remote border town clean up a difficult criminal gang. Erza solved dozens of criminals in one go, Mira smiled. How about it? Our fairy queen is very handsome, isn't she? Rhodes nodded. Well, he is very handsome. To be fair, Erza is powerful, has a personality, and currently seems to be a rare decent person in the guild. And her appearance is no worse than Myra's. Rhodes estimates that she is definitely the object of many people's hearts. But he didn't dare to have any random thoughts, because Mira taught him Erza's glorious record. Chapter 17, Part 2. For example, she beat Natsu, who challenged her until Happy couldn't even recognize him, repaired Gray, who was walking around naked until he was almost buried in the ground, and beat Loki, who pursued her until he was barely alive. Rhodes suddenly felt that the word stained he used earlier was not wrong. Raki? What is that? Mira noticed that Lucky came back with a gift box as tall as a person after sending Erza out. It's a specialty Erza brought back for me. Lucky happily put the red gift box down with a thud, which sounded very weighty. Chapter 18. Could Erza, who looks resolute and has a scary aura, be so careful about bringing specialties to her companions? Rhodes was a little curious about what was in the gift box. It couldn't be armor, could it? I'll turn it on now. Lucky laid the gift box flat, gently untied the ribbon with the bow on it, and opened the lid. What is this? Rhodes couldn't recognize what was inside for a while. First of all, it's not armor, but it is indeed a metal product. It looks like a statue of a woman? No, there shouldn't be weird gaps and handles on the statue. Just when Rhodes was confused, Lucky had already pulled the handle and opened the metal statue, revealing the ferocious spikes inside. Unexpectedly, Lucky's expression was not one of horror, but surprise. It's the Iron Lady. She stroked the cold metal and blushed on her face. It's great. Iron. Rhodes' tongue was a little tangled, his head was buzzing, and he took half a step back unconsciously. This thing is a torture instrument. Isn't it a specialty? What place's specialty is a torture instrument? Why do you need to give gifts to the Iron Lady? And Lucky can carry this thing back without changing his face. Is he also a natural god like Kana? The big question is, girl, why are you so excited? Mira was smiling. The gift Erza prepared is so thoughtful. Intentions? Do you have ulterior motives? No, Mira. Rhodes considered his words. Are you sure this is a gift and not a death threat or something? How could it be? Lucky's favorite thing is all kinds of torture instruments. This well-made iron lady is the best gift for her. Mira tilted her head. Hey, didn't I tell you? There are many torture instruments in Lucky's room. You only told me that Lucky's collection was very interesting, and you also offered me a chance to visit it. Rhodes realized a serious problem. The girls in the guild, such as Miji, Kana, Lucky, Erza, although one is more beautiful than the other, they are also more difficult to mess with. That is to say, Levi is cute and has a good personality. Although Mira is a bit sinister, she is gentle most of the time. I just don't know if there is anything else he doesn't understand. The afternoon was a little more leisurely, and Rhodes had time to practice magic for a while. Erza seemed to have nothing to do, so she came to the guild to chat with a girl with long green hair. Thanks to her, the tavern was calm as never before. But according to Mira, if Erza were to be quiet when she first came back, everyone would get into trouble again soon. Levi held a small notebook and reviewed the pronunciation he learned in the morning. Whenever he saw Rhodes suspending his practice, he would come to him to learn a few strokes of Chinese characters. During this period, Makarov also helped Rhodes change the summoning spell. Generally speaking, when the Celestial Spirit mage summons the Celestial Spirit, he will call the name of the Celestial Spirit and use the corresponding key at the same time. Rhodes only has one pendant, but it is connected to different summons at the same time. Now he can only distinguish them by calling their names. When he becomes more proficient in using magic, he can omit most of the lengthy spell chanting and just call his name. The initial spell would be used when he sensed a new summon. Toad, 3 wolves, 6 birds, stone monster. Rhodes counted the wild monsters he might summon next with his fingers. He felt that there was still a long, long way to go before the little dragon and the big dragon. Although I don't know if any of the ordinary wild monsters are particularly good at fighting, but judging from the size of the river crab today, even the weak monsters in the game like 3 wolves and 6 birds can be summoned based on their size alone. It can be called a beast. For Rhodes, the most important thing now is to increase magic power and improve magic proficiency. In terms of magic, the time you can meditate every day is limited. If you are not in a hurry, the only thing you can practice is magic. Rhodes caught Worm cheating on food and drink in the tavern and started practicing the magic of closing the door, that is, canceling the summons. I am the one who connects the two worlds. Follow my wishes and return to the abyss, Poro. After the chanting of the closing curse was completed, Worm's figure gradually became transparent and finally disappeared completely. Successful. Rhodes was very happy that he could do it the first time. Then he began to chant the summoning spell again. Pass through the door. Open the door of the abyss, Poro. The magic vortex appeared and disappeared, and Worm reappeared in front of Rhodes. Very good, come again. Return to the abyss. Poro. Open the door to the abyss, Poro. Return. Turn on. Rhodes practiced magic over and over again, and Worm could only cooperate. It's okay at first, but it gets boring as the times increase, and the little guy becomes more and more casual. Sometimes he appears standing, sometimes he appears sitting, and sometimes he lies on his back trying to cross his legs but can't. Worm felt so annoyed, but Rhodes couldn't help it. Who said it consumed less magic power? If it were to summon river crabs instead, with Rhodes' current magic power, he would have to rest twice at most, and there would be no way to practice over and over again. Sneeze. After practicing countless times, Worm sneezed hard when he appeared in the tavern again. The long tongue has been retracted by it, and a long snot is hanging up. Rhodes' first reaction was, "So you have a nose?" Worm sniffed hard, turned around and faced Rhodes with his butt, and the little horn on his head drooped. He was a little angry. It was a harsh winter over the howling abyss, but summer had already entered the kingdom of Fiori. It had been going back and forth between hot and cold so many times that even the Poro was about to catch a cold. I'm sorry, it's my fault. What should I do if Poro is angry? Rhodes thought for a while and said tentatively, Mira, I want an omelette. Worm's originally drooping little horn stood up. And another bowl of tomato and egg soup? Worm turned around and stuck out his tongue again, with happiness written all over his face. Although I haven't fully understood Worm's hobbies yet, eggs are definitely one of Worm's favorite foods. It's so coaxing. Rhodes skillfully reached out to touch his head, corners, scratched his chin, and rubbed his belly. Mira smiled and helped him order, but a slightly harsh voice sounded from above. Have you finally calmed down? You guys have been noisy since the beginning. Rhodes raised his head. The person speaking was a blond young man with a lightning scar on his right eye. Wearing something like a pair of headphones, wearing a tan top with a coat on top. It's obviously summer now. At this time, he put his hands on the railing on the second floor and looked down at Rhodes with an unkind expression. Chapter 19, Part 1. Laxus. Mira stood in front of Rhodes, raising an arm to block him. Rhodes is a companion who joined the guild just yesterday. He was just practicing magic. Magic? That? Don't make me laugh. Lagerthus chuckled. What use can such pitifully weak magic do? Worm was trembling with fear, and Rhodes frowned. This was the person with the worst attitude he had ever seen in the guild. Even Ms. Polyusica, who claims to hate human beings, must be very attentive when caring for the wounded. And the person in front of me looks like she really hates him. No, it's not that I hate him. It feels more like contempt. He seems to exude a sense of superiority. Rhodes was new here and didn't want to cause trouble. I apologize if I disturbed you just now. It's true that not only the magic power, but also the character is pitifully weak. I really don't know what the old man's point is in taking in such a guy. Laxus looked down, and this time he was no longer talking to Rhodes, nor just to Mira. There are already enough weaklings in Fairy Tail. Why are these guys qualified to be my companions? Huh. Such words angered many people in the tavern, especially Natsu and Gray. The two people who stayed calmly under Erza's suppression slapped the table and stood up. What did you say? The sound of the bottom of a wine glass hitting the table was heard from other tables, and everyone stared at the blond young man upstairs with dissatisfaction. That guy Laxus is still like this? Erza stopped chatting with her friends and said with a cold face, No matter what, it is too much to say such things, Laxus. Laxus' eyes met Erza's, with a tense look on his face. Oh, Erza, you are going to do this for these losers? That's enough. Makarov didn't know when he sobered up and took out a task list. Lagerthus, there is a commission naming you here. Go and deal with it first. Laxus looked at Makarov, who didn't even look up at him. He snorted softly, went downstairs, picked up the task list and turned away. Boring. Everyone watched Laxus leave, more or less dissatisfied with him. Natsu had an angry look on his face, as if he wanted to rush forward and fight at any moment. But Gray put his arm around his neck and stopped him firmly. In the corner of the tavern, two men and a woman stood up silently and followed Laxus' footsteps. The atmosphere in the tavern cooled down as a few people left. It took a while for everyone to sit down again, and gradually there was talk. Sorry for causing trouble to everyone. Rhodes felt that there might be something wrong with Laxus, but today's conflict was caused by him, so he would better go to the yard to practice next time. It has nothing to do with you. That guy has always been like this. Lucky curled her lips and said, if he wasn't the grandson of the president, he would have been kicked out long ago. Raki. Mira stopped her from continuing. The president must have felt more uncomfortable than anyone else when Laxus became like this. Is he the grandson of the president? Rhodes compared the tall and straight Laxus with the short and lean president. I can't tell. Yes, he is my grandson, but... Makarov looked in the direction of the guild gate. I'm sorry. It's my responsibility for Laxus to become like this. Don't care about what he said. No. You don't have to apologize. Rhodes could almost guess what was going on. According to the routine of the general story, this child was probably said to be worthy of being the president's grandson since he was a child, and then developed a rebellious mentality. It didn't matter for a short time, but after a long time, I began to want to be recognized for my own abilities rather than as the grandson of the president. Konohamaru on the set next door seemed to be acting like this. The difference with Laxus is that his rebellion lasted a little longer and seemed to go astray. Rhodes recalled it, but he really couldn't remember anything related to Laxus. But since Tatsuya said it was a happy reunion, then this kid can probably change. The guild gradually returned to its usual bustle. The sun is setting and night is falling. The lights have been lit in the guild, and there are only a few guests in the tavern still drinking and chatting. Rhodes was ready to divide the work with Lucky and start sweeping the floor. Let me come downstairs alone today, Lucky said apologetically, because I came so late in the morning. Rhodes said, then I'll go upstairs. Lucky stopped her and said, no, I have to leave it to Sister Mira to clean up the upstairs. Rhodes was puzzled. I'll do the same. Mira is also having a hard time today. No, it just can't be done, Lucky said. The guild has regulations. Except for a few approved people, no one else is allowed to go to the second floor. Why? Why is this like a martial arts novel with a gang-forbidden area? Because there is a special bulletin board on the second floor, which contains extremely difficult S-level tasks. Lucky explained. Although the reward is considerable, you can lose your life if you are not careful. Therefore, only S-class magicians are allowed to go to the second floor to take on tasks. S-class magicians are easy to understand. Rhodes guessed that they are probably the strongest people in the guild. He asked, "That doesn't mean it's forbidden to go upstairs, right?" Lucky said helplessly, "Because there are too many daredevils in the guild." That's true. Rhodes thought about the appearance of the guild members and immediately understood this rule. For example, Natsu is so reckless and he is the protagonist, and he might secretly go on an S-class mission one day. This rule may have been made just for him. No wonder only Mira, the most steady among the waiters, is allowed to go up. By the way, how many S-class magicians are there in the guild? Who is the most powerful? Lucky thought for a while. Not to mention the guild president. The strongest one is probably that uncle. But he went out on a mission and hasn't returned to the guild for 2 years. 2 years? Why does a mission take so long? Rhodes asked in surprise and worry. He won't encounter anything dangerous. No. Lucky immediately waved her hand to deny that Mr. Gildarts is as strong as a monster. Although I don't know what the mission is, he is the only one who will never get into trouble. It seems that the uncle is quite trusted by Lucky, so Rhodes no longer worries about it. What about him? Besides him, there are S-classes, including Laxus, Mistgun, Erza, and... Lucky changed her words and said, "No, there are only 3 of them now. As for which one is the strongest, I don't know. You have already met Laxus and Erza. As for Mistgang, you probably won't be able to see him. It seems that only the president of the entire guild knows his true identity." Another mysterious person. Rhodes silently wrote down Mr. Gang's name. The most troublesome one is Laxus. Rhodes was still thinking about when he could help the president teach his ignorant grandson a lesson, so that he wouldn't always have his nostrils in the air. But think about my current summoning magic, Poro, Canyon Swift Crab. Chapter 19, Part 2. It seems that it cannot be completed in a short time. Chapter 20, Part 1. Another busy day. Rhodes returned home and simply took a cold shower. Fortunately, it's summer now, and since I gained the magic power, I feel my body has become stronger. Otherwise, I might not have gotten used to it so quickly. I don't take a hot bath because there is no solar device, and it is too troublesome to use firewood to boil water. Rhodes thought about buying a device that uses magic power to boil water, but after asking about the price, he decided to endure it until he couldn't bear it anymore in winter. After helping Worm take a bath, Rhodes began to miss the washing machine in the school that could be used once. Washing clothes by hand is really slow and troublesome, and I don't have a mobile phone for him to watch videos while washing clothes. At best, the music could only be played with an old-fashioned hand-cranked gramophone. He was not used to it at first, but after listening to it, Rhodes suddenly felt that he was very stylish, just like those high-class characters in the movies of the Republic of China. It's just that the songs recorded in this record are a bit mixed, including pop, rock, classical, and everything. Swish, swish, swish. The washboard was leaning against the basin, and Rod grabbed the wet clothes and rubbed them on it, leaving white foam. He wasn't very proficient in using this thing, but when he rubbed it to the rhythm of the music, he felt that the sound was quite relaxing. Worm stared at the bag of washing powder curiously, and finally couldn't help but lick it with his big tongue. Then its facial features twisted and spit out white powder. "Are you stupid?" Rhodes knocked Worm on the head, threw him into the sink, and said, "Rinse your mouth." After hanging the washed clothes on the balcony, Rhodes noticed several pots of green plants on the balcony. One pot looks like a succulent, and the other 2 pots look like orchids. Because no one has watered it in the past 2 days, the soil on the surface is dry. It seems like there are a few more lives that I need to be responsible for. Probably. Rhodes picked up the watering can next to him and filled some water to give these poor plants some rain. The showerhead sprayed out strings of water droplets, moistening the leaves and soaking the soil. Rhodes seemed to be able to feel them coming to life, and he said amusedly, "From now on, your name will be Tatsuya, your name will be Renming, your name will be, well, when you get to another world, your father will have to take care of you 3. Worm looked at his master's expression and felt that he was not smiling happily. "Why are you showing that expression?" Rhodes put down the watering can and picked up Worm. "Go and wipe the floor you just soiled." Worm looked at him in shock. "Didn't you say that you treat me as a pet, but you want to F***K the floor? Don't look at me like that. How can a pet not know how to do housework?" Rhodes threw Worm into the laundry room. "You are responsible for cleaning up the mess you made." Worm squatted on the ground and looked at his little paws. "How to wipe them? How Worm is going to clean the floor is not a problem that Rhodes has to consider. Anyway, the little guy can understand people's words and is not low in intelligence. There will always be a way. Rhodes gets angry when he thinks of this. How come Worm, a creature from the howling abyss, can understand the language as soon as he arrives, so he has to learn it himself? Why can the language pack given by Mr. Shiki be shared? Rhodes sat at the desk in his bedroom angrily and opened the book he brought back from the guild. This is a history book. Although he is not interested in history, he always feels the need to understand it. And in order for him to read well, Levi lent him a pair of glasses. The magic prop, Fengyang's glasses, can make people read books at a speed of 32 times at the fastest. In other words, as long as you concentrate on reading for 1 minute, it is equivalent to reading for half an hour. Rhodes felt that his blessing had arrived. No matter how much he disliked reading history books, he could still do it in a few minutes, right? But a minute later, snap! The sound of the book's spine hitting the table woke up the sleepy Rhodes. He misjudged one thing. Although the time for reading was shortened, there was still the same amount of content to read. If you are not interested, you are not interested. People who get sleepy when reading history books will not become academic masters even if they have magic props to assist them. For a person like Rhodes, it is suitable for him to ask Shibiki to use magic to directly instill knowledge, or listen to beautiful girls like Levi telling historical stories. For example, today's story about the legendary hunter by Bel Barasso and the story about the hero by Ruben Coluto left a deep impression on him. First, do 50 push-ups to wake up. Rhodes lay on the ground and did 30 push-ups in one breath, and then his arms began to tremble. If you want to increase your magic power as soon as possible, in addition to meditating, you should also exercise a little bit, otherwise you will suffer. This is what the president told Rhodes. However, Rhodes always felt that when the president said he would suffer a loss, he did not mean going out to fight, but that he would suffer a loss if he fought in the guild. Although he doesn't like fighting, looking at the situation in the past few days, there is no guarantee that he will be affected one day. Thinking about how powerful the girls in the guild were, I couldn't imagine how heavy Natsu Gray's fists were. Rhodes gritted his teeth. To increase the magic power, 1. In order not to get beaten. Another 1. Just so I can get beaten back. Another 1. The reason for Rhodes' efforts became more and more strange. Exercise to improve physical fitness, meditation to improve magic power, and reading to increase cognition are the 3 most important things for Rhodes at this stage. The biggest difficulty is reading. Books related to magic are fine, but books on history and geography are really troublesome. Rhodes decided to ask if there were any newspapers and magazines here tomorrow to learn a little bit about the news. The next day, the weather was a bit cloudy, but the sun was not visible, and it didn't look like it was going to rain. Rhodes chose a cool way to go to work, riding the canyon swift crab. The appearance of the huge dark green crab attracted the attention of the neighbors, and many people were startled by its strange appearance. But when it started running with Rod on its back and actively avoided pedestrians, the little bit of panic disappeared. It turns out to be a mount. It looks a bit strange, but is quite majestic. Hey, is that a crab? Why doesn't it walk sideways? The one on the crab's back seems to be Fairy Tale's magician. Is he a newcomer? He seems to be a restless guy. Someone with sharp eyes saw the blue coat of arms on Rhodes' arm when his short sleeves were blown by the wind. Someone is riding a monster and running wildly in the street. It's so novel. It's Fairy Tale, so that's no surprise. The coat of arms on Rhodes' arm was providing him with convenience in a strange way, but he didn't know it. Rhodes held the 2 tentacles of the swift crab with both hands, feeling like he was driving a heavy motorcycle. I only heard a gust of wind and stopped at the entrance of the guild. Less than a kilometer away was still too close. Chapter 20, Part 2. Rod managed his hair that was messed up by the wind, secretly thinking that it was a good thing it was a self-driving car, otherwise it might have knocked several people away. The river crab locomotive feels unsafe when running at full speed. Chapter 21, Part 1. The tavern was as lively as ever, and Erza's intimidation dropped significantly as the time she stayed in the guild increased. Although she would still stand up and preach when the trouble went too far. But the scar was healed and the pain was forgotten. There will always be people who drink too much when they are chatting, or who start fighting when they are making trouble. This resulted in Rhodes sometimes being forced to practice avoiding various flying objects. After going to work in the morning, Rhodes left Worm behind and rushed to the library. He wanted to use Fengyang's glasses to read some books about magic. As for history and geography, let's leave it for now, and just ask Levi to listen to stories occasionally. The pages of the book turned quickly, and the entire text and sentences on it were reflected in the lens. Rhodes was able to see every sentence clearly. An encyclopedia with more than 700 pages. It only took Rhodes about 20 minutes to read it all. Rhodes already has a superficial understanding of many magics in his mind. Although it is not memorable, it is equivalent to reading it carefully. This kind of prop is really useful for people who don't need to read intensively but who like reading. For those who don't need intensive reading and just want to broaden their knowledge, this is a complete artifact. The reading speed of 32 times is too exaggerated. Rhodes doubted whether Feng Yang's glasses used time-related magic. The inventor is a genius. Putting the encyclopedia back into place, Rhodes sat down and meditated with his eyes closed, letting his brain rest for a while. After a while, I looked for books related to ancient magic and space magic, and read them until I went to work at noon. Are you Rhodes? My name is Marcus, and I use sand magic. A young man ordered a drink and sat at the bar to chat with Rhodes. I've heard your legend, it's very powerful. Rhodes was stunned. What legend do I have? Mira poured Marcus a glass of wine with a smile and listened with the same curiosity. A gossip like her doesn't know what powerful legends Rhodes has. That's it. Before I joined the guild, I easily defeated the beast tide and destroyed a large forest. Marcus waved his hand. As expected of our fairy tale magician, he is a perfect fit here. Rhodes also wanted to clarify the outrageous legend, but Marcus didn't give him a chance. He asked, "Hey, what kind of magic are you using? It must be very powerful, right?" "It's not very powerful, I use." "Is it Natsu's kind of fire magic? In terms of destructive power, it must be fire, right?"
No,
That is earth magic. It is extremely destructive when used in the forest. I heard that Jura, one of the top 10 magicians of the Holy Land, uses earth magic. In addition, Rhodes tried to interrupt several times, but found that this person didn't give in at all. He looked very much like a barber shop lady he had encountered who was pulling people to apply for a card on the road. Marcus is the host of various guild activities. He usually likes to talk to people, and after he drinks, he will be a little. Mira whispered in Rhodes' ear to introduce Marcus. She considered her words and continued. He is a bit talkative, and it is difficult to interrupt. Just listen quietly and listen to what he has to say. Okay. Rhodes nodded. Compared to Lucky, who likes to collect torture tools, Marcus talks a lot after drinking and is considered a normal person. Mira reminded. You can just leave if you don't want to hear it. In the guild, as long as you hate something, you can express it directly. There is no need to wrong yourself for things like politeness. It's okay. I'm a little curious about who spread the rumor that I destroyed a forest. Rhodes was a little unhappy. He was obviously attacked by a wild beast. So why did he suddenly become a destructive maniac? Yes, who would make up such a rumor? Mira looked a little unnatural. Of course, she wasn't the one who started the rumor. She just truthfully told her companions about Rhodes' origin. Beast tides and forest destruction are all real things. But for some reason, word spread that Rhodes easily defeated the beast and destroyed the forest. Mira is not sure now whether she is the culprit. Marcus droned on for almost 5 minutes before stopping to take a sip of beer to soothe his throat. Just as Rhodes was about to take the opportunity to ask a question, a wine bottle flew over and hit Marcus on the back of the head. Uffed. Marcus spit out half a glass of beer in one breath. Who is it? This kind of question hardly needs an answer. Marcus turned around and saw the conspicuous battle group in the tavern and joined in without saying a word. Rhodes dodged very quickly and was not sprayed by the drink. Mira skillfully took out the rag and wiped the counter clean, and then watched her companions fight with a smile. The fight continued until someone knocked over Erza's plate. The air fell into a brief silence, and Natsu and Gray tried to sneak away. Give me. Enough is enough. Erza stood up suddenly, and her gauntlet-clad fists fell equally on the heads of every combatant. Several people, including Naz, Gray, and Marcus, covered their heads and fell to the ground. Erza clenched her fists. Okay, since you want to fight so much, then I will fight with you until one of you can't stand up. Love. Happy. The blue cat stood on the table and raised his hand, gloating. They can't stand up anymore. Haha. Mira smiled happily. Sure enough, it's like this again. The word, and was used well. It simply gave Rhodes a full understanding of this guild. Here. Mira brought out a piece of pudding. I'll give this to Erza later when the time is right. Rhodes was puzzled. When is the right time? Mira pointed at Erza and smiled without saying a word. Erza, who had been so majestic just now, suddenly started to tremble, and she staggered back to her seat as if she had lost her soul. She did not sit down, but squatted down and picked up a pile of broken porcelain pieces and smashed desserts from the ground. My strawberry pudding? The domineering fairy queen was as helpless as a little girl at this time. Ah, Erza is so cute like this. Mira held her face, enjoying the strange fun. Now should be the right time, right? Rhodes walked towards Erza hesitantly. You guys. The air pressure around Erza dropped, and she turned to glare fiercely at the culprits lying on the ground. Everyone couldn't help but tremble. Miss Erza? Rhodes shouted, and specially added the honorific. Erza turned her head suddenly, with a shadow on her face, and one eye seemed to be flashing red, like a beast about to become angry. The astonishing aura made Rhodes palpitate, and he seemed to be stared into a low-pressure area by her eyes. Your pudding seems to be strawberry-flavored too. Rhodes said this reluctantly. The astonishing courage lasted for another second. Then the queen turned into the big sister next door. She stood up, straightened her hair, and showed a gentle smile. Thank you very much. Erza even clenched her fists and began to self-examine, saying sadly, Really, I almost got angry because of a pudding. My practice is not enough. Happy sprouted wings from his back and flew to Rhodes's ear without noticing anything, complaining. He's obviously already angry. Rhodes said nothing and looked at it with admiration. Kitty, do you really dare to say this? Chapter 21, Part 2. Isn't it a good idea to give her some face? Erza said seriously. Speaking of which, aren't you Rhodes? I'm very touched that you care so much about your companions just after joining the guild. A truly moved expression appeared on her face, and she hugged Rod's head into her arms as she spoke. That's right, fairy tale should be like this. When Rhodes' head hit the hard metal armor, making a crisp sound, and his head was buzzing. He stole a glance at Mira, who gave him a thumbs up at the counter. Is this also part of your plan, miss? Mira. Chapter 22, Part 1. Rod made it back to the counter alive. Mira asked with a smile. How was it? Erza's hug. Rhodes rubbed his forehead. As solid as a rock? Ah, I can't tell whether you used the wrong word or whether you were stating the facts. Mira covered her mouth, unable to hide the smile in her eyes. Why does she always wear armor? Rhodes thought, if Erza didn't wear armor today, it might be a little embarrassing, but at least it won't give you a headache. Erza has been like this since she was a child. Except for bathing and sleeping, the armor is almost never left behind. Myra's movement of wiping the table slowed down, probably because of uneasiness. Can someone as strong as her feel uneasy? Rhodes always thought that he was the most uneasy. Before he learned magic well, he might not even dare to leave the city of Magnolia. This kind of thing depends on the heart and has nothing to do with strength. Mira grabbed her left arm with her right hand. Her expression became sad. Many of our fairy tale companions are carrying heavy things, trauma, pain, hardship. Even me, no, even Rhodes. I will never forget the confusion and panic in your eyes when we first met. Rhodes looked into Myra's eyes, and what was revealed in her light blue pupils was not teasing or teasing, nor was it the usual bad taste when watching a show, but an empathetic sadness. Has she also experienced panic to the point of being overwhelmed? Or is it, as she said, more severe pain and trauma? I don't want to leave that impression on you, although it's true that I'm not very strong. Rhodes said this, and then abruptly changed the subject. Isn't the president not here today? Yes. Mira calmed down and said, the president is writing a letter of apology on the second floor. Oh. Rhodes responded absently, then realized something was wrong. A letter of apology? The president is writing a review? Who is he going to report to? Of course it's the council. When talking about this kind of thing, Mira finally smiled again, because Gray was complained about sexual harassment. How could Gray? Rhodes subconsciously wanted to retort that Gray couldn't be this kind of person, but considering that person's stripping fetish, it didn't seem impossible. So he really did it? Of course there was no substantive action, Mira smiled. He just accidentally took off all his clothes when he was escorting a city official's carriage. Rhodes glanced at Gray, who was currently chatting with someone wearing only a pair of big underpants. It was him as expected. The client's wife and daughter were both in that car. Mira seemed to be gloating again. If Gray hadn't defeated a group of robbers on the way and perfectly protected them, it wouldn't have been as simple as filing a complaint in the end. Then why is the president writing it for him? Rhodes felt a little sorry for the president. The old man took good care of him, but he actually wanted to take the blame for Gray. Because Gray is a member of the guild. All his actions during the execution of the commission represent the guild. That's why the guild has to deal with the aftermath, apology, and other matters. Of course, it is also up to the guild president to decide how to teach Gray a lesson afterwards. Mira looked at the second floor with soft eyes. The president is like a father to everyone, especially to the homeless children, a responsible parent. Rhodes looked yearning. The same goes for you, Rod. Huh? Rhodes failed to hear Myra's last words clearly and suddenly felt a little dazed, closing his eyes and falling down. Mira quickly supported Rhodes, but then she herself fell down. Strange. I suddenly feel so sleepy. After the two of them, everyone eating, drinking, and laughing in the tavern also fell down one after another, some lying on the table and some falling directly to the ground. Worm, who had been playing with Happy for some time, was also lying on his back on the table, exposing his heart-shaped belly. This feeling. Is it Mist Gang? Erza persisted for a few seconds longer and finally fell asleep on the table. Even Makarov, who was on the second floor, was shaking his body slightly, feeling a little sleepy. The president jumped over the railing and jumped downstairs. How long are you going to keep doing this? A man wearing a black turban, a black cloak, and a face scarf strode in. Sorry, I will apologize to everyone when I get the chance. He went to the bulletin board to pick out a task list, handed it to the president for confirmation, and then immediately turned around and left. Really? Hurry up and unlock the magic. Learn. The moment Mr. Gang stepped out of the guild gate, his figure disappeared as if erased by an eraser. At the same time, everyone who was sleeping in the guild suddenly woke up. Damn it. Is it Mist Gang? That guy. The sleep magic is still so exaggerated. Everyone complained, and Natsu chased him out the door. Mistigan, come and fight me. Damn it, you do this every time. As soon as Rode woke up, he found himself lying on the floor, his chest still a little heavy. Sorry, I'll get up right now. Mira stood up gently, not forgetting to reach out to give Rode a hand. Originally, I wanted to help you, but I didn't expect it was Mistgun's sleep magic. Rode held her hand and stood up, his eyes blank. It's okay, Rhodes, this is the guild. Mistigan is a partner. He has no ill intentions. Myra's tone gently soothed Rhodes' emotions. She felt that his hands had become cold and sweat was forming on his palms. Is this a sign of extreme uneasiness? Would the sudden sleep magic frighten him to this extent? Mira held Rod's right hand with both hands, hoping that he could calm down. Rhodes pursed his lips, gently pulled his hand back and clenched it into a fist. I know, I'm fine. Of course something happened. Without preparedness, he suddenly lost consciousness and had no ability to resist. This was a very scary thing for Rhodes. In the past few days, my heart, which had calmed down a little due to the joyful and lively atmosphere in the guild, suddenly became anxious again. There should still be many terrible things in this world that I don't understand. Mistgun is an ally, but there should also be someone as powerful as Mistgun as an enemy, right? Rhodes took a few deep breaths to try to calm his heartbeat. Worm seemed to feel something and ran back to hug Rhodes' calf. The reassuring warmth passed from Worm's heart-shaped belly, and Rhodes leaned over and hugged it. The soft poro actually gave Rhodes a sense of security. All fear stems from the unknown and weakness. He lifted Worm up and looked at him. If he felt uneasy, just try to become stronger. Not to mention there are plugins. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 23, Part 1. Thank you. Rhodes expressed his gratitude to Mira for her kindness. Now I know why Lucky said that no one has seen the true face of Mistgun. Mira was still a little worried. So she followed his words and said, well, he is always mysterious, and he probably has his own reasons for it. Hey, even Erza was hit? Rhodes noticed that the entire guild was stunned. Does that mean Mr. Gin is much stronger than Erza? No, strength and weakness cannot be compared in such a simple way. Mira said, if we fight head-on, Erza has a way to defend against this kind of sleep magic. You can't be sure of this unless you have a serious fight. Is that so? Rhodes nodded. Miss Mira is said to be not good at fighting, but she can always speak clearly when it comes to fighting. Is it because he knows his teammates well enough? Or has he watched too many fights? Many people in the guild are also talking about the Mistgang incident, and some feel that it doesn't matter and they should do whatever they want. Some were proud to have such a powerful magician in the guild and showed admiration. Some of him felt unhappy and shouted that he would be beaten sooner or later. This is generally how fairy tale guild members get along with each other. showing off their own personalities while being tolerant of other people's practices. If you can't tolerate it, then have a fight to resolve the conflict. If it can't be resolved, find an opportunity to have another fight. After the fight, we are still a family. Like Mira said, things you like and dislike can be expressed directly. Okay, now I hate Mr. Gang, and I will beat him up in every possible way from now on, Rhodes said. This kind of statement should be considered to be in line with the style of the guild, but it is a bit difficult to implement. Well, you have to work hard. Mira smiled. There's also the word arrogant. Isn't it wrong to use it? Rhodes replied, my magic must be used for group fights, and there must be more than a few tricks when beating him. Mira showed a helpless expression. Okay, Mistigan has a reason why he has to do this, and he will explain it to you later. Then, Makarov spoke out to stop the condemnation of everyone in the guild, and quietly paid attention to Rhodes with his peripheral vision. Seeing Mira talking to him, the president was relieved and said angrily, Gray? Yes. Gray stood up straight subconsciously after being named. The good thing you did caused me to be nagged by the judges again. Yes, I'm sorry. Gray looked away, not daring to look at the president, as if he had a guilty conscience. At this time, Natsu returned to the guild angrily after chasing the Mistrigan without success. But when he saw Gray's appearance, he immediately burst into laughter, so much that others could almost see the fire in his throat. Ahahaha, Gray, you got scolded again. Hey, Gray gritted his teeth. That be asterisk 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 de Natsu. He was more tired of being ridiculed by Natsu than being scolded by the president. You too, Natsu. However, Makarov yelled at Natsu again. Why would a mission to capture wild boars burn several acres of crops? You even dried up the water in the rice fields. Natsu and Gray stood in a row, sweat starting to form on their faces. Asterisk asterisk hole. You've destroyed more farmland than the wild boars themselves. The president scolded the two for several minutes. He was so angry that he used magic to enlarge his head and roared in their ears with a mouth that could almost swallow the two people. Natsu and Gray were almost blown away. However, the president scolded them for so long and didn't even say a word to ask them to change their bad habits. There was no substantial punishment. The president vented his anger and went back to write a letter of apology. The farmland destroyed by Natsu was compensated on the spot with compensation, so there was no need to worry about this. Gray's apology to the client was also quite sincere. Of course, the words promise not to do it again can be ignored. It's just that next time there is a mission to escort a lady, try not to arrange Gray. Makarov caught a glimpse of a handsome guy chatting with two beauties on the stairs. Loki couldn't be arranged either. The last time that guy attacked a female artist from an entertainment company that had released a commission, he also received a complaint. Makarov sighed. Not a single thing makes people worry. But seeing the children being so noisy, and energetic, he couldn't help but be happy. Happy troubles. Mira brought some tea and snacks up in time, which made Makarov feel a little relieved. He pushed further and said, just replace the tea with wine. No, President. Mira put her hands on her hips. You drank a lot yesterday. You can't drink anymore today. You should also pay attention to yourself. Yes, Makarov said listlessly. He himself is also a person who doesn't make people worry. Of course there are magazines. During the afternoon break, Lucky faced Rod's question and pulled out a book behind the counter. The weekly Soshara is the most popular magician magazine now. I bought this copy a few weeks ago and forgot to take it back. Rhodes took it and looked at it. On the cover were three handsome guys, one of whom was Mr. Shipiki, who had loaded the language pack for him. The other two also have their own characteristics, but the poses the three of them pose together reminds him of the Rockets. Are they all magicians of the Cyan Pegasus? Rhodes asked. Lucky nodded. Yes, the theme of this issue is Cyan Pegasus, a guild with many handsome guys. Rhodes had reason to suspect that Lucky put it here because she wanted to see the handsome guy and forgot to take it back. When you open the magazine, the first page is a portrait of Shipiki, followed by information about his age, magic, hobbies, relationship status, and so on. After that, there were two people from the same guild and the same team as him, and they were also in a similar pattern. Eve from Holy Knight, Shibiki from Hyakuya, and Lien from Sky Knight. Together formed Trimins, the signature team of Cyan Pegasus. Later in the interview column, it was also mentioned that they had a powerful wizard as their captain and guide. All three said that he was a very manly wizard, the elder brother and teacher they longed for. That is the man known as the strongest Cyan Pegasus, Ichiyo Wangdri Kotobuki. It's a pity that Mr. Ichiyo learned that the magazine's space was limited, so in order to take care of the younger generations, he specially gave the opportunity to appear in the photo to the 3 team members, which was touching. He is a good man. Rhodes continued to turn the pages. Immediately following is an obvious advertising page. The main recommended product in this issue is the Magic Mosquito Repellent Potion. Spray it lightly to keep away mosquito bites. Just looking at the introduction in the advertisement, the effect seems to be much better than mosquito coils, toilet water, and the like. The merchants even spent extra money on special effects. Because Rhodes stayed on the advertisement page long enough, the magazine directly emitted light and projected a 3D image in midair, showing how to use the potion. Chapter 23, Part 2. Coupled with professional dubbing and high-quality advertising slogans, Rhodes, a poor guy, couldn't help but want to buy a bottle. Chapter 24, Part 1. It's this kind of advertisement again. It's very annoying. Lucky's attitude towards this kind of advertisement was similar to Rhodes' attitude towards software opening screen advertisements in the past. It was new at first, but after seeing it too much, she became disgusted. She said mysteriously, "If you turn a few more pages, there will be a surprise." Surprise? Rhodes flipped back as he was told. The column behind the advertisement was the news column he wanted to read. The surprise Lucky was talking about was obviously not this, but Rhodes still glanced at it. The boyfriend of the popular actress of Ryder Entertainment Company is exposed. It was said to be an exposure, but it was actually just a photo of the 2 of them from behind. Rhodes didn't know the popular actress, but he only thought that the rumored boyfriend looked like a certain handsome guy in the guild. The council decided to step up efforts to crack down on the Dark Guild. It was like an official article, but it had nothing to do with Rhodes. He had asked in a subtle way whether Fairy Tail was really not the Dark Guild. The Fairy Tail magicians wiped out the bandits in one fell swoop. The title is normal, but there seems to be a sentence in the content. The bandits were extremely ferocious, and the fighting was so fierce that the pine forests on the mountainside were burned to ashes. Lucky said it was a magazine from a few weeks ago, and Rod didn't even bother to guess who did it. After flipping through the news column, Rhodes finally saw the surprise Lucky mentioned. This is not. Isn't this Mira? That iconic white hair. The hairstyle is the same as now. The bangs are tied into a bunch and combed on the top of the head. The smile was different from what he had seen before, a little more charming than usual. The key point is that Mila in the photo is wearing a sea blue swimsuit, standing naturally on a beach, keeping one hand holding her hair. There isn't much fabric on the upper body, so Rhodes wouldn't be able to tell whether it was underwear or not. Even if you try hard to look away from the gravitational place, you will still be attracted by the smooth shoulders and delicate collarbone. The lower body is a long skirt with high slits, or simply a large piece of cloth tied randomly and hung diagonally on the waist and hips, showing off a waist that can make countless girls envy. Mila's right leg was completely covered by the long skirt, while her left leg was exposed to the air through the slit of the long skirt. For the first time, Rhodes learned that Myra's coat of arms was white and was printed on the side of her left thigh. It's beautiful, isn't it? Are you all stunned? Huh. Rhodes nodded subconsciously at first, then felt something was wrong and shook his head in the negative. But I still feel something is wrong. Saying that Mira is not beautiful is really against my will. Really? Lucky looked regretful. I have the weekly Sociala from the past year, and more than 20 of them have photos of Sister Mira. Do you really not want to see it, Rhodes? No. Shame drove Rhodes to say no, but he always felt that he would regret it if he refused. He looked troubled. I just want to borrow the magazine to learn more about the situation here. When you ask me this, it feels weird whether I borrow it or not. Ha ha ha. Lucky couldn't help laughing, covering her waist with one hand and slapping the counter with the other, same as what Kana said. Rod's reaction was so funny. He is different from Natsu, who is completely clueless, and he is also different from shameless uncles like Mikao and Wakaba. Only someone like Rhodes who knows what he needs to know but is very shy is interesting to tease. Kana. Rhodes thought of the alcoholic bad woman. Although Mira said she was a good person, Rhodes wanted to keep a small notebook. Lucky laughed for a while, and finally stopped when Rhodes wanted to run away. Sister Mila started receiving invitations to be Sociala's special model last year, and she became very popular from the first photo shoot. Sister Mira has appeared on magazine covers more times than them. Lucky pointed to the boy band on the cover. Now, she should be the best cover girl among all the magicians in Fiori, and also the signature girl of our guild. It turns out to be the sales girl. Rhodes felt that he seemed to have figured out Myra's position. Mila is also very powerful. Fairy Tail is really Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She can fight like S-class wizards, but she can't fight like me. This is also particularly famous in other fields. It seems that the reason why Fairy Tail has become one of the most famous guilds in the country is not just because of its outstanding ability to get into trouble. Although he was slightly tweaked, Rhodes finally borrowed the magazine. The price of the salad in the weekly magazine is 300J. It's about the equivalent of 2 glasses of the cheapest beer. If the magazine is a weekly, Rhodes can afford it. It's just that it's a bit troublesome to buy previous issues of the magazine. It's better to borrow someone else's to read and buy the future ones yourself. Lucky has promised to bring it over tomorrow. In her words, it is useless to leave it there anyway. If you make room for it, you can put one more collectible. She seemed to resent the magazine, because Soshala claims to introduce the latest high-quality magic products on the market, but her favorite torture device has never been seen in the magazine. Well, that's too much. It's simply false propaganda. For the sake of her borrowing his things, Rhodes decided to agree. That's right, false propaganda. Lucky, who had received support from Rhodes, completely concluded that this was the publisher's fault and clenched her fist. I'm going to sue them in this week's magazine opinion poll. Rhodes looked at the other party's serious look and felt that he might have said the wrong thing. Well, how about you be more decisive? Absolutely. Lucky thought for a moment and nodded heavily. Yes, absolutely. I want them to understand my attitude. Rhodes, did I say the wrong thing again? Well, I just gave it a try when I was invited by chance, and then it became hard to refuse. Mira herself is not very interested in being a model, but there is no objection. After all, she and Elfman lost their biological sister last year, so both of them were immersed in grief for a long time. It's almost impossible to even do any of the magician's work. If it weren't for the income from photo shoots and a little savings from the past, the siblings might be in debt like Rhodes. It is precisely because of this that Mira does not want to refuse the magazine's invitation, even though she does not really need this income now. Let's not mention these things for now. How is your practice, Rhodes? It's okay. I feel like I can try to summon new wild monsters in a few days. Wild monster? Rhodes nodded. Well, the collective name of my summons, is Poro considered a wild monster? It's pretty much the same anyway. Then do you want to find someone to try in actual combat? Actual combat? With whom? Well, Mira pointed her chin with her finger. You also know that there are many militants in the guild. Just find one at random. If it's your first time, just choose the one you dislike the most. Based on Myra's sinister character, Rhodes suspected that she was stirring up trouble. Chapter 24, Part 2. But it doesn't matter. It's never good to practice alone. He pointed at a certain handsome guy in the pub. Of course, he is the one who looks the most unpleasant. Loki. Loki, who had just been fed a sip of wine by a beautiful woman not far away, raised his head in confusion. You can read more daily new novels on fictionzone.net. Both sites share the same login details, so you don't need to sign up again. Chapter 25, Part 1. The battle location was chosen in the guild's backyard. In fact, Loki wanted to go to the street in front, but Rhodes refused. He estimated that he had only learned magic for a few days, and he would probably not be able to win. He would be pushed to the ground and beaten in public. Didn't he lose face? However, the situation is not much better after choosing the backyard. I don't know who shouted, "Rookie Rhodes' first battle, challenge Loki." As a result, almost everyone in the tavern came to watch the fun. That's so deceitful, Loki. I want to fight the newcomer too. Natsu recklessly pushed aside the crowd and pushed forward, even spraying small flames from his mouth. There's nothing I can do about it. It's all because my light is too dazzling. Loki raised his index and middle fingers to push up his glasses, his face exuding confidence. Ah, Loki, 2 female fans screamed excitedly for Loki. This person, who even leads a fan club during fights, really makes Rhodes envious. No, it's because he can't bear to see him ruining the guild's atmosphere. The two stood opposite each other, about 4 meters apart. Rhodes looked at Loki seriously and had to admit that this man was a million times more handsome than him. The audience stood in several rows in front of the door to watch at close range without worrying about being accidentally injured. Then both sides are ready. Makarov stood at the front of the crowd. Bet on Loki and you'll get 1 for 1. And bet on Rhodes and you'll get 10 for 1. Everyone enthusiastically placed bets, and Rhodes almost fell down. President, why do you? I thought the president was here to act as a referee and make sure nothing happened to them, but it turned out that the market was opening? Since Kana isn't here, I'll bet on it. Don't worry about it. Sure enough, The upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. Okay, it's settled. You two can get started. Rhodes glanced at the 2 trays in front of the president. Loki's tray was full, and his tray only had 3 bills. Come on, Rod. One of them comes from Mila's friendly support. Come on, newbie. Beat up that boy Loki. The other 2 are Macau and Wakaba. They want to see Loki get beaten, and the bets with high odds are more exciting. Wait a minute. Rhodes raised his hand. President, 30,000 J. I bet I will lose. No, match fixing is prohibited. Makarov refused decisively. He waved his hand and said, now the battle begins. Rhodes missed the opportunity to make a fortune, so he had to hold his necklace and prepare to chant. Do you have the element? I happen to be the same. Loki showed his ring. I don't have the magic system. I don't often practice magic in the guild these days. Isn't this the first time you've seen me? Loki smiled and said, sorry, I'm not in the habit of observing men. This person really deserves a beating. I am the person who connects the 2 worlds. You? Wait a minute. Loki trembled all over after hearing Rhodes chant. He immediately stretched out his hand to stop. Are you a celestial spirit mage? No, but the president said it's a bit similar to celestial spirit magic. Rhodes showed his necklace and said, well, what I use is not the star spirit key. That's right, ha, ha ha. Loki smiled a little dryly. In his panic, he didn't even notice that Rhodes' magic item was not a key. Do you want to continue? No need. Loki ran out of the backyard gate in a panic with sweat on his forehead. Well, I suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Let's compete next time. Goodbye. Huh. Hey, all those who bought Loki to win were collectively dumbfounded. What is that guy Rocky doing? People who lost money denounced Loki. The 2 girls chased him out. Ah la la, it's rare to participate and win money right away. Mira stroked her cheek with one hand, feeling a little happy. Makarov has also made a lot of money now, but he is worried about Loki. Does it just have some similarities with the Protoss magic to make him so sensitive? Macau and Wakaba were so happy that they hooked up with each other and paid 10 for each, winning several days of drinking money at once. Well done, newcomer. You defeated Loki in no time. Happy complained. Love? But he didn't fight at all. Ah! Natsu jumped out happily, just in time. I'll fight for Loki. No, Natsu. Erza put her hand on Natsu's shoulder. Rhodes has only learned magic for a few days, and the battle is to test his strength. Your attack was too frivolous, so let me do it. Without Rhodes paying attention, his opponent changed, and he was also a ruthless one. Miss Erza, are you serious? Affected by the performance of Natsu and Gray these past few days, Rhodes was somewhat timid. Of course, Erza said with seriousness written all over her face, even if it's just to thank you for your previous care, I will do my best. Please don't go all out. At this critical moment, Rhodes didn't understand the key words wrong. Erza was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Don't worry, I understand. I won't be harsh to my companions. Gray and Natsu must have something to say. Rhodes gave up his struggle. He didn't want to hit anyone. He couldn't beat him anyway. Compared to the reckless Natsu, Erza might strike more lightly. President, please open the market quickly. I bet on Erza to win. Me too. Hurry up, President. I refuse. Makarov said that he would not do such a stupid thing. If Natsu comes on the field, someone might still bet on Rhodes, and if Erza comes on the field, forget it. If he goes all in on Erza, will he, the banker, have to pay for it? Erza, be gentle. Rhodes, try your best to survive. We will miss you. Rhodes, a sparring session, isn't it? Rhodes was made nervous by this group of people. Come on, Rod. Rhodes felt warm in his heart. Fortunately, Myra's attitude has not changed, and she is as encouraging as before. No, why is she holding a medical kit in her hand? Then the second game, Rhodes versus Erza, the battle begins. As the president finished speaking, Rhodes didn't care anymore. He held the necklace. I am the one who connects the 2 worlds. You, the creature of Summoner's Canyon, answer my call and pass through the door. Canyon Swift Crab. The chanted spell has been slightly adjusted compared to the previous one, making it more compatible with Rhodes' magic and making the summoning process smoother. Ripples appeared on the ground like water, and green canyon swift crabs emerged from them. Oh, is this another summon of Rhodes? It looks very strong. I thought he was going to let Worm deal with Erza. Don't be ridiculous. If we want to fight, of course we will let the spectator Worm go back. Erza was very virtuous in martial arts and patiently let Rhodes finish the chant, then opened her hand and said, "Change your clothes." A magic sword appeared in her hand. Rhodes pointed at Erza and gave the order, "Assault." Click, the river crab opened and closed its pincers twice, and sprinted towards Erza, seemingly dragging an afterimage behind him as he ran. Rhodes had seen the power of this move, which could easily break the courtyard wall, but to these destructive maniacs in the guild, it was just ordinary. So it should be a good starting point. Chapter 25, Part 2. Erza made a judgment in an instant. Is it a speed type?
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.